Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Twist in Time in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 21, No Fan, No Gauntlet. Temari hurled her fan for a raw wind attack the moment Hayate shouted for them to begin. Unfortunately, she never quite managed to complete the small movement. Somehow, her fan had gained extra mass to a degree that she found herself unable to lift it off the ground. Metaphorically stomping down the panic bubbling inside her, she turned sharply towards the red-eyed opponent standing 20 steps away from her, eyeing her with utmost concentration. She knew it then and there that her fan suddenly becoming overweight was the Uchiha's trick. Before she could find out how he had managed something like that, Sasuke completed hand signs for a jutsu and shouted, "Great Fireball Jutsu!" As her reflexes kicked in, Temari dragged her fan with her with much effort to a spot she deemed relatively safe, which was 5 steps to the left of the spot which would take the brunt of the oncoming attack. Much to her surprise, no raging ball of fire ever came her way, instead nothing happened at all. Temari wanted to laugh at the poor attempt of the Uchiha but realized that the situation made no sense. She knew for a fact that Sasuke was proficient in his clan techniques, just like all Uchihas before him were. She also knew that the boy was talented and wouldn't botch up a jutsu because of nerves. So she assessed Sasuke again, who was standing still on his spot. He should have made a move towards her already, since he had an opening. She found it silly that he'd not take advantage of this situation. She narrowed her eyes at the boy and she saw it. The tiniest of a flicker. The shirt's unruffled appearance despite the wind. The Sasuke in front of her was a genjutsu. Before she could counter it, a hard punch to her back sent her falling forward. With scraped elbows and bruised knees, she rolled to avoid a straight kick from Sasuke and stood swiftly, her fan forgotten. Sasuke didn't stop the attack and pushed on, punching, jabbing, striking, and even grappling. Temari was oddly impressed by the quick yet incredibly powerful attacks from the Uchiha. The fact that the guy had already outsmarted him did sour her mood a bit. Nonetheless, she fought back. Temari had always been flexible and her sensei had often told her to incorporate that into her taijutsu. She'd never really honed her skill with hand-to-hand combat, partly because she liked refining her wind jutsu more and partly because she never found a good training partner. Kankuro rarely did outdoor training and Temari was too weary of Gaara to ask for his assistance. But now against Sasuke, she forgot all about her previous struggles with taijutsu and focused in the moment. Improvisation was something she did quite often because even though she used large-scale wind attacks, the wind was never hers to control. The wind is untamable and follows no order. Which meant that Temari had to adapt and adjust to the wind flow in each battle she fought. Moving her fan with the right speed, the right accuracy according to the nature of the wind on the battleground was what made her attacks so effective. She applied this presence of mind to taijutsu and what she got were fluid movements and subtle attacks. She didn't outright block any of Sasuke's offenses but tried to avoid them altogether. Naturally, she sustained a few injuries anyway because Sasuke was clearly better at taijutsu than her. Temari felt herself getting lost in the rhythm of swiping feet and moving hands, aware of her oncoming defeat yet not demotivated by it. A particularly harsh shove just under her breast sent her gasping for air. Her eyes landed on her fan and she wished she knew how to make chakra strings, if only to pull her trusty weapon back to her. Sasuke caught her glance and became more forceful with his punches, sensing that if he didn't end this soon, Temari would figure out a way to get back her fan. And then it was all over. Sasuke kicked the inside of Temari's calf and her leg buckled beneath her as she kneeled and fell on her back. She didn't know why she wasn't fighting back harder and why she didn't feel the sting of vitriol she often did when Kankuro or Baki defeated her in a spar. She realized with a jolt that it was because she hadn't used her fan in this match at all. Somehow, it told her that had her weapon been accessible to her she'd have destroyed the Uchiha. It wasn't as reassuring as she previously thought though. Her fan was all she'd ever given her energy to. It was an extension of herself in a battle and she relied too heavily on it. Without her fan, she faced a nasty handicap, one she was unable to overcome in this match and she didn't like it one bit. She only half listened as Hayate pronounced Sasuke the winner. Someone's outstretched hand brought her back to attention and she accepted Sasuke's sweaty palm to get up. Only then did she notice the small but noticeable bruise forming on the boy's left cheek. So she did land a hit on him after all. Good match, he remarked, tone monotonous but sincere. She nodded at him and then walked towards her fan. She inspected it inside in frustration when she noticed the small paper seal on the inside of a furl. A weight seal, she breathed, when did you put it on there? Sasuke walked up to her, just before the match started, as I walked past you to take my position. Temari blinked and recollected the scene. Sasuke had been too damn sneaky about it. Oh, that's technically cheating. But it sounded lame even to her own ears. Sasuke shrugged, we're ninjas. Cheating is an art we have to master. Deceit is how we win, remember. Temari closed her eyes and smiled plainly, ugh, I wish I could have shown you my moves. I suck at taijutsu. Sasuke tilted his head curiously, that was quite good though. I haven't encountered such a graceful style of combat before. Not even the Hyagas are that light on their feet. Temari's eyes grew wide, whoa, that's one hell of a compliment. Thanks, though you did a great job, better than me at least. Sasuke smirked, I can't disagree with that. Temari ripped off the seal and sighed in relief when the familiar weight of her fan met her hands. You made that seal? It didn't seem like the regular ones. Sasuke started towards the stands, let's just say that I've a skilled wannabe seal master in my team and I take full advantage of it. With that, Sasuke joined his teammates. You stole my seals? Naruto asked, rolling his eyes already. Sasuke smiled just the tiniest bit, of course I did. Naruto huffed, you owe me one. Nope, Sasuke replied easily, remember the last Tora mission? I did it solo, saved you two some bloody scratches. Consider us even now. Despite feeling annoyed by him, Naruto shook his head in fondness and smiled, you're a right bastard huh? You both are, Sakura commented, and turned towards the ground, now shut up. I want to see Shikamaru's fight. Sasuke eyed her suspiciously, why the sudden interest in the Nara? He lowered his voice, trying to steal Naruto's boy free dash. His teasing cut short as Naruto slapped him on his head, you need to stop talking Sasuke before I throw you down the railing. Sasuke begrudgingly set his sight on Shikamaru who was in a laid-back yet alert stance. The boy gave Sasuke serious antithesis vibes. Shikamaru strained his eyes to catch even a twitch from Dosu since he couldn't rely on his hearing right now. He'd inserted some well-insulated earbuds in his ears already. He knew they wouldn't hold much against the intensity of the sound barrages Dosu was capable of sending his way, but a little protection was always smart to have. Dosu's hunched frame was also deceptive because the genin was highly agile. A few seconds after the match began and it became clear that Shikamaru won't attack, Dosu made a move. Targeting the Nara directly, Dosu shot a beam of compressed sound towards him. The most it could do was send Shikamaru backwards a bit while causing some damage, but Shikamaru dodged it easily. Dosu's intention wasn't to harm his opponent anyway. He just wanted to gauge how sensitive Shikamaru was to sound. Dosu noticed how Shikamaru hadn't winced when the beam had went past him, something most of his previous enemies did. Well, Dosu knew just the frequency to send his next attacks at then. Dosu moved. He was aware of the shadow manipulation techniques Shikamaru had in his repertoire and didn't want to give the genius a chance to trap him at all. Moving a fast circles, he shot blasts of ultrasound towards Shikamaru. The thing with sound attacks is that they're not perceivable by the naked eye, so anticipating where they'd hit is almost impossible. That's the card Dosu always held safely in his hand. The element of surprise and uncertainty is what won him his battles. But somehow, even as Dosu sent consequent blasts, each at a different angle and intensity, the Nara managed to avoid them all. The only way he could do it was by determining the trajectory of each ray just by observing how Dosu angled his gadget-equipped arm towards Shikamaru. That was intuitive genius at play and some really fast physics. It was mildly astounding. Especially the fact that Shikamaru was in shape to dodge the attacks. Naras weren't known for their physical fitness. Shikamaru breathed hard as he moved out of the way of a blast and smiled internally as a chunk of rock cut his skin due to collateral damage. He felt nauseous though, the sounds, though muffled, still reached his ears. He felt mildly misbalanced in his own body, but he ignored it for the time being. Anytime now Dosu would change tactics. He didn't have endless chakra to keep wearing him out like this. True to his thoughts, Dosu halted abruptly and furrowed his brows at Shikamaru. Shikamaru himself was in the process of attaching strands of his shadow to pieces of debris produced by Dosu's attack. He was intent was discreetly directing them at Dosu to either throw him off enough to capture him with his shadow or to break his gauntlet. He just needed Dosu to waste a little more time figuring out his next move. The Konoha genin was by the trees at this point and could easily hide his moving shadows with the shade of the green cover. Unfortunately, Shikamaru was used to predicting logical decisions of his enemies but not instinctual ones. Dosu was a genin with an unrefined and brutal attack plan, who went with his gut more than his brain. And something was telling him that the longer he waited to come up with a safe strategy, the higher his chances of losing became. So abandoning the use of his sound, he ran towards Shikamaru, who went stiff at the abrupt change in tactics. Nevertheless, Shikamaru didn't retract his shadows but controlled them while going toe-to-toe with Dosu in taijutsu. He hadn't practiced this a lot, but he'd done such multitasking enough in the past 2 months to still have some grip over the chunks of cement. His arms suffered serious damage though, as Dosu's gauntlet added a lot of impact to each of his strikes. Bearing the pain, Shikamaru continued moving his improvised weapons towards the edge of the tree line. He marveled briefly at the fact that he would have given up by now, wouldn't have risked injuries just to win. But training with his friends, seeing their passion and drive, not to mention the pep talks Naruto dropped on him so often, had changed something within him. He still wanted a relaxed lifestyle, but he also wanted to prove his competence. And that's what he would do right now. Dosu had already noticed the earbuds and had made sense of the things that occurred previously. He thought about what he could do next. A large-scale sound blast could easily render those earbuds useless and would sure disorient Shikamaru, considering the close proximity which the two were sharing. Dosu needed some reprieve though, so he made to pull away from their taijutsu bout. He didn't realize until it was too late that he wasn't the only one moving away from Shikamaru. More than a dozen arm-sized parts of hard rock flew towards Dosu, tendrils of blackness guiding them in zigzag paths. Generally, Nara only controlled shadows over solid substances because the medium allowed for easy manipulation, but a few, including the clan head and now his son, were able to directly control a shadow. Which meant that they could lift it from the ground and use it like a separate entity, a malleable weapon as long as it stayed connected to the user. Dosu's fast movements saved him some deep bruises, but he couldn't prevent his gauntlet from shattering, its pieces falling at his feet, infuriating him beyond measure. Dosu wanted nothing more than to strangle Shikamaru with his own fucking shadows, but he couldn't because he was the one being strangled at the moment. Looking back, Dosu shouldn't be surprised that Shikamaru had capitalized on the extra shadows the rocks formed from the air onto the ground and used them to perform the neck-binding technique on Dosu. Dosu cursed audibly even as his throat constricted by the shadow bind. He was mad at himself to have let his lack of awareness cost him this match. It wasn't as if the Nara had outsmarted him really, but outthought him. The strategy hadn't even been complicated, something Dosu had expected from the hailed genius. Rather, it'd been simplistic and small and entirely unimpressive, but at the end of the day, effective. Yield? Shikamaru questioned as he huffed. He'd really put his all into this match. Dosu spoke through gritted teeth, yes. And took in a large breath when his neck was let free. Shikamaru was announced as the winner and Dosu rushed towards the exit. He wouldn't wait to have a friendly chat with the guy who had just humiliated him. Fuck Konoha and their niceties. He had wanted to win. Shikamaru frowned as he saw Dosu leaving quickly, without carrying out the unsaid rule of shaking hands after the match. He shrugged, he couldn't be bothered with all that when his arms were aching uncontrollably. His chakra pool was near empty, the direct shadow manipulation took a lot of it. His eyes met Naruto's and a kind understanding is what Shikamaru saw in them. A small nod and then Shikamaru turned towards the proctor. Er. He drew Hayate's attention. I, Shikamaru Nara, hereby withdraw myself from this tournament owing to the injuries I've recently suffered and the low levels of my chakra. Moving forward would be stupid at this point. Hayate yawned and noted down something on his notepad as whispers broke throughout the audience. The civilians couldn't see the logic and immediately booed the Nara while the Chunins and Jounins approved of Shikamaru's decision. Shikamaru couldn't care less though. He once again stepped onto the bleachers and Ino him gave a look that said, "Why do I even bother with you anymore?" Choji offered him chips which Shikamaru ate gratefully. Even though he'd ultimately lost the tournament, he'd done so on his own accord and he'd won the battles he'd fought. Shikamaru thought that was worth something. His gaze met Naruto's. The blonde was moving towards the center of the arena. Shikamaru smirked lazily at him, which meant all the best in Nara speak. By the way Naruto smirked back, Shikamaru was certain that Naruto had understood him. And so the next match begun. Chapter 22, A Sandy Fight. For those in the audience that knew just who Naruto and Gaara were besides being genins, this match was much awaited. After all, it wasn't every day that two Jinhyurikis went head-to-head with one another. For the two genins in question, this match wasn't all that extraordinary. Gaara still stood in his usual battle stance, hands folded and feet relaxed. Naruto still stood with legs planted firmly on the ground and his eyebrows crinkling just the slightest bit in concentration. It was all a show though. Gaara was strong but Naruto had just thrashed Orochimaru. Nevertheless, this match was important for Naruto. After the last chat he'd had with Gaara, he wanted to make sure that by the end of this battle, the two would share some form of trust, however tentative it may be. Height shouted for the match to begin, and Naruto dashed forward. He'd decided to be reckless this time. As expected, Gaara's sand, that's sentient in its own right, came for him. Chasing Naruto to either trip him or block his path, the sand made for a ferocious foe. Naruto dodged all the wisps and blades of sand easily, and a little chakra went a long way in making him more agile than he actually was. In middle of this tornado of sand, Gaara gritted his teeth in annoyance as Naruto moved away from yet another of Gaara's attack. He needed to control the sand more precisely, and get it to entrap Naruto somehow. Or at least slow the blonde down. Just as Naruto was beginning to think that this match might be too easy, the sand attacks went from mildly inconvenient to downright vicious. All the sand grains morphed into sharp needles and came straight for Naruto, and as far as he could tell, most of them were pointed at his vitals. Well, Gaara certainly didn't pull his punches. He was going for the kill. Naruto knew though, that this was Shukaku's influence. Gaara had looked somewhat mellow at the beginning of the fight and now a quick glance told Naruto that wasn't the case anymore. Gaara was clutching more like scraping at one of his temples with one hand while the other directed the sand around. Desperation did bring out Gaara's innate talent. Rolling down in one swift motion, Naruto successfully misled the needles straight into the ground. Good, he needed a few seconds. He gathered and morphed chakra, with more difficulty than usual. Fire didn't come naturally to him. By the time the needles managed to get out of the ground, a tremendous ball of bubbling fire was headed their way. It would have been awesome if the sand had turned to glass, but alas, Naruto or any other ninja for that matter wasn't capable of producing a temperature that high. So all the heat from the fire did was transform the sand needles into something goopy and with no proper molecular structure. Really, Naruto should have gone with a water attack. But the guy was being reckless and trying out things he normally wouldn't have was a part of this recklessness. Gaara frowned when the not-so-sand stuff didn't respond to his call that well and glared at the Uzumaki. Damn him. That deceiving asshole. That Uzumaki had been so friendly and smiley the last time he'd spoken to him. And now, he was decimating his large-scale attacks like flicking a fly. Besides, Shukaku couldn't stop ranting about the ways in which Gaara should kill Naruto, starting with maiming the blonde, and ending with maiming the blonde. Nobody said Shukaku was creative. With an impassive face, Gaara unleashed all the stored sand inside his gourd as well as the sand that made his gourd. He still had plenty of material to play with. But he would hold back this time, no need for giving Naruto an opportunity to use fire or water on his sand. Naruto understood shortly that now it would be his turn to attack and not run around the arena trying to get the sand to just back off. Feeling light, Naruto breezed through the distance between him and Gaara. 3 steps away from the redhead, the sand greeted him like an old friend, blocking his path by turning into a solid, hard, almost impenetrable wall. Chuckling, Naruto moved to the side where Gaara was left exposed, but the wall followed his every movement. Indeed, a marvelous shield. He'll kick through it, Sakura whispered to Sasuke, watching the match intensely. Sasuke shook his head, nah, he'll crack some ridiculous joke and Gaara will surrender voluntarily. Sakura snorted, now wouldn't that be entertaining? In his half-hearted efforts to outmaneuver the wall, Naruto decided that striking up a conversation with his opponent wasn't too inappropriate for these Chunin exams. "Hey Gaara," he chirped, "how have you been, buddy? Missed me?" Gaara raised an unimpressed eyebrow, trying to figure out if Naruto was an idiot or not. "Uzumaki, this is match. You are my enemy. This is no place for small talk." His tone was dry and slow, as if he spoke any faster, Naruto wouldn't be able to keep up. Naruto huffed, pouting for added effect, "Friends are friends, Gaara. Chunin exams or not, they always find ways to annoy each other. And since I know you're so very chatty, I figured you'd love to give me the details of your training this last month now, wouldn't you?" Gaara's motivation to kill the Uzumaki became more personal and insistent now. "I will kill you." "Oh yes. Sure. How lovely," Naruto said dryly, "just the 1235th death threat to add to my ever-growing list. I've got my coffin ready, what are you waiting for? Just do the deed already." "I will if you would just stop moving." Gaara growled, moving his hands almost aggressively to control the sand wall. Deciding that he'd had enough fun for today, Naruto conjured a sort of wind chakra. It made for an interesting sight. Blue energy grinding against its own self, making the edges obscure but deadly sharp. Almost as if baiting the wall to approach him, Naruto struck the sword of pure chakra in front of him. The wall blocked the attack, but the clean swipe tore through the sand neatly, dividing it in two. Wasting no time, Naruto wedged his hand in between and in a show of dramatic strength, pushed the two parts away while hopping through. Gaara seemed calm even then. The redhead had the most practiced stoic face ever. Naruto rushed forward with a feint, a kick, duck, pull back and push in with a leg sweep. Gaara blocked the initial fake kick but fell prey to the sweep, falling straight on his butt. Immediately rolling on his side, he twisted Naruto's arm when it came to stop him. Grunting, Naruto placed his sandal-clad foot on Gaara's shoulder blade, pressuring the body part hard. A little lack of focus allowed Naruto to wrench out his arm and cradle it. That had been one hell of a painful twist. Gaara stood up too, his sand supporting him like a crutch. His ankle and shoulder were hurting incredibly. Nevertheless, he could win. Coaxing the now cooled sand that took the brunt of Naruto's fire, he once again tried to dodge Naruto's right hook. Successfully so, but the blonde followed with a jab just under his neck, knocking the wind out of him. There was definitely some internal bruising bound to show up. Distracting Naruto with taijutsu and the sand from his gourd was easy. The blonde looked thoroughly engaged but also thrilled. Odd. Blocking another punch, Gaara finally let out the other batch of sand onto Naruto from behind. A tickle from a lone grain was all the sensation Naruto received as a warning before a barrage of spears came for him. With his back turned towards the weapon, Naruto kicked Gaara hard on the shin and pushed the redhead forward, moving sideways to get out of Gaara's reach before bringing forth both his palms. Seamlessly, he blasted a wind bomb that changed the trajectory of the spears violently, even destroying a few of them completely. Not wasting the opportunity, he seized Gaara's foot under his own and leaped on the redhead's prone form, pinning his opponent's arms in the process. Gaara was trapped. The match was over. Gaara didn't try to struggle out of Naruto's grip. It was futile. Fate had already called the match. Above him, Naruto frowned. "You didn't listen to Shukaku." Gaara nodded, the dirt smearing his hair. "I took your advice. Tried to speak with Shukaku last week. I can manage his rage and bloodlust better now." "So you were suppressing his ill intent throughout the match?" "Pretty much." Naruto grinned and hopped off, extending his hand. Gaara eyed it, contemplating. "Come on. I swear I don't bite." Shooting a blank stare at the blonde, Gaara accepted the hand and hauled himself to his feet. The two walked towards the stands, as Temari and Kankuro looked at their brother's back, frozen in a trance of disbelief. Their brother had never lost before. And sure as hell hadn't been so calm when he'd come close. That was impressive. Naruto complimented with a pat on Gaara's back. "What was? I didn't even win." "No, but you managed to control the beast inside of you. And Shukaku is one of the more violent ones out there." Gaara hummed, accepting the fact. Silence ensued before Gaara asked a question, Uzumaki. Were you toying with me before? Naruto titled his head, what, when? You seem strong. Very strong, Gaara paused, you didn't need to stretch the match and have a chat. You could have ended it shortly after it began, if you wanted to. Naruto's gaze turned far away, I could have, but then I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to hear how you sound amidst a fight, now would I? As I recall, it's a mix between exhaling and inhaling helium, your voice. Gaara stayed silent for a long time. I don't think I understand your sense of humor, Uzumaki. Naruto laughed. A short break later, semi-finals commenced. As per the random chit-picking, the first match was between Sasuke and Sakura. Sakura checked all her weapons as Naruto wished her luck for the second time that day. Smiling at him, she nodded resolutely to herself and proceeded towards the arena. Sasuke was already at his spot, narrowing his eyes at her in a silent challenge. Good. She wasn't expecting anything less. Hayate coughed and Naruto prayed. This match would be utter chaos. Chapter 23, Destiny. Shikamaru placed his arms on the railing, leaning forward to see the match below. Unfortunately, his arms weren't quite healed by the hasty jutsu the medic had performed, so he winced a movement that didn't go unnoticed by Naruto. Took quite the beating there, Naruto said with a cheeky smile, didn't you? Shikamaru edged away, arms going back to his sides as his posture slouched. Well, some of us aren't blessed with monstrous chakra reserves and lightning-quick reflexes like you. Naruto chuckled. Oh, if only Shikamaru knew what a mess he'd been the last time. Still, you did well. Naruto said, Doso looked so damn pissed. Shikamaru snorted, I suppose I must have shattered his massive ego, yeah? I hope he doesn't come to murder me after this though. As if he could do that, Naruto shook his head, you'll handle him if he decides to do anything. I'm sure. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. One moment, Naruto would taunt his incompetence, and the next, commend his skills. The guy needed to make up his mind. Hayate's rather lazy yell to begin brought the two boys' attention to the battlefield. Sakura, with her fingers moving rapidly, yelled a jutsu. A rather bold move to begin the match with. Sasuke, who confirmed that what Sakura had yelled was indeed the jutsu the hand signs were for, substituted himself with a log under the green cover. Smartly so, because the next instant the log was pummeled by blunt and sharp rocks alike. Unfortunately, Sakura had anticipated his exit and directed a genjutsu at his location. Which is why Sasuke felt incredibly disoriented when he did land by the trees. Trying to get some form of balance, he tried to find a tree trunk, only to almost face-plant into the soil when he gripped plain air. Realizing that it's a genjutsu and that someone is quickly approaching his location, he flared his chakra while moving around randomly, just in case Sakura fired another attack at him. The moment his senses worked like they should, he blocked a high kick coming from Sakura. And what a kick it was! His sore arms the next day would be testament to that. Nevertheless, he went on the offense now. He'd allowed himself to be wholly dominated by not being on guard at the start of the match. He hadn't expected Sakura to attack so quickly and viciously, which in hindsight, he should have. Sakura could be right if she so wished, and right now, she'd wished exactly that. So he held her by the elbow, spinned her so he could punch her stomach with as much force possible. Sakura gritted her teeth, booming as the punch landed. Watch out, she breathed, or I'll vomit on dash. That earned her another punch, right below her right breast. The accompanying sound of something breaking meant she'd have cracked ribs at the end of this match. Anger rising within her very spirit, Sakura wrenched her elbow free, getting some scratch marks for her troubles. Sasuke had unusually sharp nails. Flipping away, Sakura tried to create distance between the two of them. She realized, a second too late, that something was pulling on her leg and she went crashing down, mid-somersault. Damn Sasuke's ninja wires. Blood oozed out of her ankle where the wire gripped hard enough to break skin. The scraped elbows that came with it as she skidded harshly on the ground just helped to sour her mood. Not waiting for her body to get settled with the pain of the new injuries, she sliced through the wires with one clear sweep of her kunai. But the moment she went back to her usual stance, an odd twitch in her chakra surprised her. But she didn't have time to ponder over that, because her mind was assaulted by truly horrendous images. Nightmarish was too generous a word for the ghastly scenes that played in her mind. Blood. Bodies. Cries for help. Tattered clothes, tear tracks. The smell of charred flesh with the sounds of anguish. These images played before her eyes, they seemed real. Too real. Yet not real at all. The faces of the people were unknown, but Sakura's heart twisted weirdly when she witnessed the sheer agony she felt. She knew what this was. The mental attack Sasuke had been practicing the past few months. And now, it seemed, that she was the very first victim of it. She never wanted anyone to experience this ever again. With all the willpower that she could muster, she broke free from the genjutsu, swaying when she realized her hands were gripping through her hair and tears were hot in her eyes, just on the verge of spilling through. When she looked up, she expected Sasuke to be in the middle of his approach towards her. To attack her and complete the match. Or amidst the process of sending a physically impactful jutsu at her. Instead, he stood there, arm uncertainly outstretched, lips thinned into a grim line. With just tiny traces of a frown dancing on his forehead. Sasuke was concerned. Sakura knew him well enough to read his subtle expressions. They locked eyes and the moment meant something. That Sasuke knew he'd gone too far, that Sakura knew it too. That Sasuke didn't want to do it, but it was match, and even if Sakura was his teammate, his friend, right now, she was just his opponent. Sakura understood that, because she was following the same ideal too. And just like that, the moment ended and Sakura broke into a sprint, Sasuke doing the same. They met halfway, engaging in hand-to-hand combat. With each attack, however big or small, they were wearing each other out. Shikamaru saw the flash of movements in something akin to awe. "Goddamn," he said, "how the fuck are they so fast?" Naruto grinned, "Because I taught them how to be." Shikamaru gave the blonde a sideway glance telling Naruto just how much he believed that and didn't move away when Naruto's arm landed casually on his shoulders, pulling him closer. Shikamaru said, "I didn't tell you this before but you've got a shit ton of sand in your hair." Naruto huffed, his breath ruffling Shikamaru's own hair, sending a pleasant chill down his spine. "I'll just tell Gaara to extract it all out later." "So, he's your personal vacuum cleaner now?" "Hey, don't put words in my mouth," Naruto defended, "but yeah, pretty much." The audience owed and awed with every kick and punch that sounded like it broke something most definitely. Half of them were rooting for the Uchiha and half for the evidently strong Kunoichi. The two genins in question were completely immersed in taijutsu, almost to the point of ignoring their own injuries. But after a little while of this constant attacking, one thing was clear. That Sakura would lose. Not only because she had the lesser stamina of the two but because her mind was still reeling from the after effects of the artificially induced nightmare. Or was it Damare? So when Sakura's knees finally buckled after a strike to her thigh, no one was surprised but they were just the slightest bit disappointed. Sasuke breathed quickly, air coming in short and rapid bursts. And then to everyone's utmost surprise and to Naruto's hearty chuckle, Sasuke fell straight onto the ground, face first. The two genins lay side by side, dirt streaking their hair and face as Hayate announced the double knockout. For once he sounded something other than bored, confused. Later, Sakura would explain happily how she'd been hitting Sasuke's nerves systemically that finally rendered his arms and legs temporarily paralyzed. Sasuke would say he'd take his revenge on her for being a sneaky ass but really, anyone could tell he was impressed. But right then, a team of medics rushed in carrying the two to someplace more appropriate for medical treatment. The audience had gone bonkers because this meant both Sasuke and Sakura were out of the tournament. Naruto and Niji's fight would be the deciding one. The final one. Abrupt, yes. But a shinobi's life could barely be called calm and expected. As Niji hopped below, assured in himself to take the win, he didn't notice Hinata's concerned gaze at his back. Naruto Uzumaki was a mere pebble in his path. Or a small rock. A minor inconvenience that's easily ignored or dismissed. The dead last of his class was what Naruto was, no matter what Niji had heard of his progress thereafter. When Naruto stood in front of Niji, he slouched purposefully throwing his hands into his pockets. No use getting ready for attacks when he knew Niji loved monologuing. Hey looked on the verge of collapsing as he waved at them to begin. Niji with his sharply angled hands and legs, rose his eyebrow pointedly at Naruto's relaxed demeanor. And just as Naruto had expected, begun his lengthy tirade. Naruto Uzumaki, how very peculiar of you to take this battle, this final fight with me so casually. If anything, you should be trying your hardest to beat me. Mind you, you can't succeed here, but I'd expected you to try your best at the very least. Perhaps, I was wrong. Niji paused thoughtfully. Actually, you might as well surrender right now. There's no point in going on when the destiny of both of us is already written and fixed. I will win and you will lose. There's no denying or evading this outcome. So should I take your lousy stance as a message? A sign of surrender. Naruto didn't know how one single human could hold that high an amount of delusion. It was amusing, oh absolutely, but also annoying. No Niji, I'm not giving up. Naruto said, still in his idle stance. Now to prompt Niji to talk about his clan seal, would you like to tell me why you're so obsessed with destiny? Anything to do with, what's under those bandages? Not that I'm trying to pry or any dash. But Niji didn't need to be asked twice. He was speaking already, sure. I'll humor you Uzumaki, because the power of destiny is one that should be known by everyone, even ones like yourself that destiny doesn't much favor. Our destiny rules us all. It decides what happens, when it happens, how it happens. You can't fight it, because your destiny is who you are. Niji's tone turned sour then. Just like Hinata-san was born into the main house because her destiny dictated it, and I was born into the branch house of my clan. He looked up, the bitter edge in his voice still evident as he unwrapped the cloth hiding the unique seal underneath it. See this? He pointed at the green design. It's a seal that I was branded with when I was only 4. Forever tied to a lifetime of servitude, just like my dear father, till the despicable main house ordered him to die for them. Don't you see? It's my destiny to submit to the whims of the main house, it's why I got this seal, it's why I was born. There's no escaping this simple reality. Just like you can't escape the fact that I'm the superior fighter between the two of us. Defying what's already in store for us never ends well. I should know. Niji's jaw hardened in anger. I've seen what happens to those who go against their superiors. These seals sure know how to dish out punishment. Naruto, who had decided not to get too emotional and persuade Niji to leave the destiny stuff behind through straight logic, failed miserably when Niji's life and the struggles of the Hyuga branch members were just that horrific. His lazy gaze turned sympathetic and then empathetic as his face lost any signs of a smile. But he knew what he had to do. Niji respected actions. He believed what he saw. A little counter-argument wouldn't hurt much though. Niji, he started, I understand where you're coming from, but you've got it all wrong. Your destiny isn't pre-written. It's a work in progress, something you craft out of your very own actions. It'll rule you only so far as you allow it to rule you. He sighed when he saw Niji shaking his head in disdain. Fine, then. Let's just get on with it and see who wins, right? If your destiny is so almighty, I'll lose. And that'll be the end of it. But if you lose. And Naruto trailed off, opting to finally begin the match. Circling the perimeter, he made sure to stay out of Niji's range. Naruto brought his hands up for a fast sequence and then unleashed a barrage of water-morphed projectiles at Niji, who swiftly dodged them, even destroying a few with his chakra-coated palm strikes. Next went the fireballs that succeeded at singing Niji's clothes, and then the wind blades that landed neat little cuts on Niji's cheeks and arms. Finally, the earth bombs left the ground beneath Niji's feet in fractures. So after 4 elemental attacks, Niji was as good as unharmed. The audience wanted a show. Naruto was just giving them one. You're persistent, Niji acknowledged, but your attacks are ineffective and, dare I say, weak. Naruto rolled his eyes. For a guy who believed his destiny was submission, Niji sure had a big superiority complex. Feeling bored all of a sudden, Naruto stepped into Niji's range, knowing full well what would come next. And as Niji's face took on a slight smugness, Naruto readied himself to face the dastardly jutsu. The Byakugan came to life and Niji yelled out, 8 trigrams, 64 palms. The onslaught of quick, sharp, impactful jabs was much harder to dodge than Naruto had first expected. Sure, he knew he was capable of blasting Niji away entirely, but where's the fun in that? Niji grew frustrated as each of his pointed strikes met only air, as Naruto's body moved in rhythmic tandem with his, always moving away just when Niji finally thought he'd got the upper hand. The 64 palms ended with a bit out of breath Naruto and a red in the face Niji. To think that this genin who was labeled as inept could outpace a Hyuga, a prodigy at that, was outrageous. But before Niji could start his objections, Naruto engaged him in taijutsu. And it was indeed a sight to behold. Though not as fluid and graceful as Temari, Niji was the epitome of body control. He wasted no movements, suffered no missteps, went through no hesitations. He was assured in his movements which were equally smart and precise. On the other hand, Naruto, who looked just as rough as he fought, somehow managed to go toe-to-toe with the genius of the clan that excelled in taijutsu. Mostly Naruto just hit Niji's arm away if it got too close to his body, but other times, he went for feints and backhanded strategies. Those included but were not limited to covering Niji's eyes briefly to kick him on his torso. The highly anticipated moment came when Naruto went for another punch, but Niji, who had finally caught up with Naruto's quite different battle style, hit Naruto straight on his outstretched fist, tipping his balance. He followed with slamming his own body into Naruto's in a strike to Naruto's shin. Naruto hadn't expected that, admittedly. He was too busy checking on Hayate and seeing if the poor guy had fainted already or not. So Naruto rolled like a ball, several feet away from Niji. Instantly getting up, Naruto groaned at the dull ache in his body. Deciding that this was a good time to end things, he finally fired off that wind blast. Niji had seen the build-up of chakra with his eyes, but it had been so quick and so sudden that he'd barely got any time to dodge. But he succeeded in avoiding the brunt of the attack. Unluckily for him, Naruto was onto him with a huge grin on his face. Niji was met with a vicious kick and then an elbow strike which hurt because Naruto was bony as a genin. Niji was worn out, and he couldn't deny it. So when the final attack came directly to the back of his head, he sagged onto the ground blacked out. The end was definitely anticlimactic, but the audience still roared with approval as Hayate declared Naruto the winner, not only of this match, but also of the entire tournament. Shrugging away the praises, Naruto followed Niji as he was carried away to the treatment center. Naruto didn't know what would go through Niji's mind once he woke up, but he was hoping this had worked, that the Niji who he'd had those small but meaningful conversations before the war would emerge from this misguided boy. Naruto also promised himself that he wouldn't allow Niji to sacrifice himself in some stupid war again. Chapter 24, Rank. Waking up to an intense throbbing in his head, it took a few minutes for Niji to orient himself and get some morsels of reality understood. He'd lost the final match to that smug Uzumaki. To add salt to the wound, the entire Hyuga clan was there to witness his humiliating defeat. Defeated by one who was deemed to lose according to destiny. There was a knock at the door and Niji turned towards it, only then noticing the small room he was in. The door flew open before Niji could muster up the energy to give his permission, and Naruto walked in slowly, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. "Hey," he said, eyeing the bandages atop Niji's whole head, feeling better now. Niji frowned at the unwanted intrusion by the person his ire was directed at. "Go away, Uzumaki. I've no intention of talking with you." Naruto smiled knowingly, as if he'd anticipated that response. "Fair enough. But Niji." Niji hummed and Naruto continued. "I didn't lose the match. So doesn't that say something about destiny?" Restraining himself from biting his lip, Niji's mind whirled through all his previously held beliefs and how a single match, a single genin had all but shattered all of them, made them look like ill-thought jokes. He didn't notice as Naruto exited the room and the door shut close after him. The next time Niji was disturbed again, it was his uncle, rather his Lord Hiashi Hyuga. For once, Niji didn't immediately stand at attention giving his greetings to the adult. Instead, he remained seated mulling over the many things plaguing his mind over and over. A minute or two passed by and Niji didn't acknowledge Hayashi's presence. So the man coughed shakily, breaking Niji's train of thoughts. "Oh, Hayashi-sama, good afternoon," Niji said stiffly. "Why are you here? Do I need to do some task, or am I required at the clan compound?" For once, the stoic head of the Hyuga clan looked visibly troubled. "No, I need to speak with you, Niji." It's important that we have this conversation. Niji nodded readily, not yet convinced that his destiny wasn't to obey the main house. The next 20 minutes were spent recounting the circumstances surrounding Hisashi's, Niji's father's, death. Niji was speechless, suffice to say. To think that his father had chosen death himself was appalling. But also, weirdly freeing. Because Niji didn't think he had any free will to make his choices, and however morbid it may be, his father had made his own choice despite being branded by the seal that supposedly took away his rights and freedom. Some of the bitterness and resentment towards the main house flew away from Niji, not because they'd done anything redeeming but because Niji felt free of that stored anger. It was his choice to not hold on to it, and wasn't that something? He still had to figure out a lot of things, but in time, Niji believed that his destiny would truly be something he'd make himself. Naruto. Oi, Naruto, wait up. Kiba's booming voice came through the crowd of people moving around the street. Naruto halted, turning to face to Akiba, who was rapidly approaching him. Whoa, what's the rush? Kiba panted slightly. What's the rush? We're 15 minutes late for the meeting with the Hokage. Naruto chuckled, continuing on his way as Kiba fell in step beside him. Relax. The summons from the tower always list a time 30 minutes before the scheduled meeting. So we're not running late. Kiba gave him a look. You're not lying, are you? I'm the beacon of truth, Kiba. I'm offended you'd have to ask. Kiba snorted. Beacon of truth, my ass. These people though, such bastards. Using tricks to make sure everyone's on time and all. It works though, and ninjas are nothing if not deceitful, yeah? Nodding his head, the other genin grinned. Here we are. True to Naruto's words, upon entering the Hokage Tower, all the other genin of Konoha who'd participated in the Chunin exams, bar Kabuto, were gathered outside the Hokage's office still waiting for a call-in. Patting Naruto's back, Kiba hopped off towards Hinata and Shino, chatting with them amicably. Naruto walked over towards Shikamaru, who was currently slumped against a wall, lazy gaze scanning the corridor with mild interest. We're going to be made Chunins, Naruto said idly, leaning beside Shikamaru. The other genin snorted. I know. But I so wish that wasn't the case. This Chunin bullshit sounds like a huge, massive pain in the ass. Oh, it is, Naruto replied. Patrols, weekly C-rank missions, gate duty, squad formation practices, but we get a cool vest, so it's all worth it, I suppose. Shikamaru groaned. That sounds awful. Is it possible to reject a promotion given by the Hokage politely? If you want to be thrown out of the shinobi program, then yes. That actually is quite appealing. No. Please. No. Shikamaru gave up, rolling his eyes despite the small smile dancing on his lips. You're so silly. Naruto said, something fond in his voice. But you love me anyway. Shikamaru replied with a lazy grin. The Nara was apparently a cheeky bastard when he wasn't being a lazy ass. Behem, a stern cough brought their attention to a woman with graying hair. You all may enter the Hokage's office now. He awaits your presence. By the end of the meeting, history was created with the promotion of not one, not two, but 4 genins to the Chunin rank. Amongst the lucky ones, or unlucky ones, according to Shikamaru, are Naruto, Shikamaru, Sakura, and Sasuke. I'm so proud of you 3, Kakashi said, wiping away a fake tear. You're just happy to be rid of us. Sasuke said, biting into his meat. Who said we're going to leave him alone? Sakura questioned. You aren't. Kakashi asked warily. We aren't. Naruto chirped, along with Sakura. Brats, Kakashi grumbled under his breath, I'll pawn you off to Asuma. Bother him. No, Naruto said dismissively, I like that guy. He knows some really cool wind jutsu. Can't subject him to our chaotic torture. So basically, you 3 don't like me. Well, duh. That's pretty obvious, is it not, ex-sensei? Wow, Kakashi breathed, y'all are insensitive little jerks. Propping her head onto her palms, Sakura smiled sweetly, just like you. A few days later, Naruto received another summons to the tower. This time, however, he reached the place early. Not many shinobi were present inside, considering the fact that it was 1 a.m. in the morning. Naruto didn't know why he was needed for a mission at such an ungodly hour, but complaining had never been a habit of his, so he sat in the lobby with a very exhausted secretary working across from him. The front doors burst open and with it came a whiff of sake and a cheerful Jiraiya. "Naruto? You're here already?" Naruto stood up, throwing an unimpressed stare at the inebriated man. "Yes. Don't tell me you're the one who summoned me." "Ah, no. That would be the old guy. Told him to wait for me, but, whatever. Let's get to his office." Naruto nodded, smiling sympathetically at the secretary before following the Toad Sage. Without bothering to knock, Jiraiya went inside the office. "Naruto's here, sensei," Jiraiya announced, immediately taking a seat on the comfortable sofa by the side. "You do all the formalities while I'll sit here and, read." Hiruzen looked at him sharply, disapproval mingled with resignation so evident on his face. He then turned towards Naruto, who was in the process of shutting the door. "Naruto, my boy, take a seat," he offered warmly. Naruto smiled at him and sat on the sturdy wooden chair, ignoring the memory of him being in that very office, seated on the Hokage's chair instead. "Did that fool fill you in on anything?" "Nope," Naruto replied, "I think he's too drunk for that." Hiruzen sighed, hopefully this mission doesn't worsen his drinking habits. Kami knows it's a mess already. "What's the mission?" Naruto asked, having an idea of where this was going already. "You, as a Chunin of Konoha, are to accompany Jiraiya the Sannin in his search for Tsunade, and help him persuade her to return to the village to accept her role as the 5th Hokage. Suffice to say, this mission is in a rank due to the importance of the tasks assigned rather than the level of danger. That's not to say that Tsunade isn't dangerous. Just stay on her right side, and she's as sweet as an angel. Anger her, and, well, there'll be a Naruto-shaped hole in some wall." Muffling a laugh, Naruto nodded seriously. "Understood. I accept this mission. When do we head out?" Hiruzen wondered. "You two were supposed to leave by 4 a.m. this morning, but there's no way Jiraiya will be sober by then. So, by noon it is. Is that acceptable?" Though the question was directed at the both of them, only Naruto answered with a yes. Jiraiya's snores were already quite audible in the small room. "I'll go back then," Naruto asked, getting up. "Yes, I should probably call it a night too." "You should," Naruto encouraged. "Also, give your secretary a break. He looks miserable." Hiruzen rubbed his temples. Right. "Good night, Hokage-sama." "Good night, Naruto." With that, the blonde swiftly exited the building. Walking back to his building was pleasant enough since Konoha at night was a very peaceful place, a stark contrast to the cheer and chatter that ran rampant under daylight. A flash of a black cape caught Naruto's eye and he stopped to assess what he'd seen. Only a shadow of a shop, as it turned out. Shaking his head at the unnecessary paranoia, Naruto entered his building, and then apartment. Tomorrow would be a long day and he needed all the rest he could get because meeting Tsunade promised to be a challenging ordeal. Naruto couldn't wait for it. Chapter 25, Tsunade. Kisame leaned onto his sword, idly caressing Samehada. "The brat's gone Itake," he said, mild irritation coloring his tone. "Why the fuck are we still here?" Itake peeked through the cover of trees outside Konoha, pretending to concentrate on something. "I've told you already," Itake sighed, "we've got to get intel on Konoha back to everyone." "Bullshit," Kisame rolled his eyes, "we should be going after that brat, getting information on him, not this shitty village." "You're stalling." Itake's eyes remained focused on the gates as he spoke. "I know what I'm doing, I've got direct orders from Pain. So it'll be in your best interest to do your job. Which is to shut up and let me do mine." Kisame grinned, all teeth and no warmth. "Lie as much as you want to, once we get back, you're going to pay for this." Itake didn't respond. "So let me get this straight," Naruto said thoughtfully, "you got us both out here." Jiraiya hummed, walking down the concrete path lined with flower pots. "To find Tsunade?" "Yes." "In a bathhouse?" "Yes." "You think that Tsunade, the ultimate gambler and drinker, will spend a Saturday night in a fucking bathhouse?" "Yes." Naruto gave out an agitated sigh, before stubbornly halting. You're being very stupid and I want no part in this stupidity of yours. Stop this and let's go to some bar or a pub or the local casino where chances of finding Tsunade are more than, 0.1%. Jiraiya looked longingly at the bathhouse entrance, but what if she's gambling while bath-a-dash? Naruto stomped his foot. Kami. Stop with your perverted shit already. I'm leaving. When it became clear that Naruto did not care whether Jiraiya followed after him or not, Jiraiya did in fact follow after him. He needed to look after his protege after all. Or so Jiraiya liked to tell himself. Gambling is all about confidence. You can get the worst hand dealt to you, yet no one at all knows that. Chipping away at the assurity the others have and slipping doubts into their minds to the point that they'd quit rather than play is something Tsunade was. Tsunade was terrible at. She had a lot of confidence, yes, but she never used that to her advantage. And she did nothing to deter others from playing till the end. She'd gained quite the reputation in the gambling communities across the Land of Fire, and that reputation was nothing good. So it wasn't surprising that the gambling house she'd visited had been overjoyed that she'd wanted to play there. They got a lot of cash out of her after all. So following her humiliating defeat that cost her the remaining Ryo she had left, Shizune, her trusted apprentice/mother figure, dragged her outside. We should get to the inn, Shizune said. You really shouldn't be drinking tonight. Tsunade laughed, a merry sound. Why not? I feel too sober to sleep right now. Let's go. Shizune sighed. No, I only have enough Ryo to pay for our rooms. And you've just lost all the remaining money we had for recreational purposes. You're going straight to bed. Tsunade was about to give her a retort when her eye caught something and she froze. What the fuck is Jiraiya doing here? She muttered to herself. Across the street, Jiraiya's abundant white hair was easy to spot. Jiraiya? Shizune questioned, is that actually him? Who else could have that awfully long white hair? Good point, Shizune said, petting Tonton, who had finally woken up in her arms. Do you think he's looking for us? Tsunade wasn't sure if she was being completely honest. Admittedly, Jiraiya had tried to find her several times before, and he'd been successful a few times too, but Tsunade had always disappeared shortly after, refusing to reform old bonds. But since the last few years, there had been absolutely no unwanted visits from the Toad Sage's side, so this was either a coincidence or he had something important to tell Tsunade. Well, unluckily for him, Tsunade wasn't going to stick around long enough to find out which one it was. She turned around, and grabbed Shizune by the arm. Walk fast, don't look behind, and pretend that we're having a conversation. We turn left the first chance we get and take the long way back to the inn. Shizune nodded dazedly, too shocked to come up with a proper reply. Walking alongside Jiraiya, Naruto squinted his eyes. You said that Tsunade had blonde pigtails, right? Eyeing the food displayed on the counter of a shop, Jiraiya nodded. Yeah. Why? Naruto hummed, oh nothing much. I just think that woman, right there, trying her best to run while looking like she's not running at all, is in fact, Tsunade. What? Jiraiya turned his head wildly, trying to spot his ex-teammate. The moment his brain registered Tsunade's presence, he ran. Naruto ran after him, owing to the fact that he had nothing better to do. Shizune stiffened. They're coming after us, shouldn't we just talk to them? Like civilized people. Tsunade's response was tugging her more forcefully and increasing her pace. Naruto rolled his eyes, keeping pace with the sun uneasily. Oi! Senju-san! He yelled ahead. We'll give you free sake if you talk to us for a while. And that's how the four were now seated at a cozy table at the far end of a homey pub, with 3 glasses of sake and 1 bottle of juice. Tsunade sipped her drink, savoring the rich flavor. So this kid is your new apprentice? Tsunade asked. Yeah. He's quite the handful. Jiraiya replied, very bratty too. You sure you're not talking about yourself? Naruto retorted, catching the small smile that broke out on Shizune's face. Instead of replying, Jiraiya took in a big gulp of his sake. Why are y'all here exactly? Shizune questioned, feeling as if she had to be the responsible one here and ask the relevant questions. Jiraiya sighed, dropping his glass on the table. He looked straight at Tsunade. Tsunade, don't take this the wrong way. Or like don't get mad. Just hear me out, okay? He paused, but seeing Tsunade's unimpressed face he hurriedly continued, you've got to come back. Konoha needs you right now. Tsunade snorted, leaning comfortably in her seat. That village doesn't care about me and I don't care about it. If Konoha needs me, she gritted her teeth, then tell it to fuck off. Sure, Naruto said, surprising her, but you still need to return. And did we tell you this? You're supposed to become the next Hokage. The remaining humor vanished from Tsunade's eyes and she gripped the table, hard. You think this is a joke, brat? Jiraiya? How dare y'all come here and expect me to even consider this bullshit? Jiraiya raised his hands in response, tone calm and placating. We're not expecting you to do anything. Sensei just thought that. Tsunade's voice came out agitated, that old geezer thought? Thought what? That sending you and Kush this brat here would change my mind after he's failed to do so for years? Give me a break. Just go away, Jiraiya. I'm never coming back. Naruto waited for Jiraiya to say something, but by the resignation clearly written on his face, Naruto figured that his mentor won't be of much help in this regard. We'll go, Naruto said clearly, only if you agree to meet with us again. Tomorrow. When everyone's calmed down and isn't inebriated. Is that okay? No. Tsunade said immediately, I don't ever want to see your faces again. Naruto looked blankly at her, then we're not leaving. Alright, Shizune cut in before Tsunade could curse Naruto to hell and back. We'll meet y'all again. At the town inn. That's where we're staying at. Naruto smiled at her and stood up, thanks. Just don't try to leave town during the night. Trust me, I'll know. Jiraiya stood up too, somewhat grateful that Naruto had handled the situation when he couldn't. He was just a bit too emotional, same as Tsunade. It wasn't easy to even sit next to each other anymore, let alone talk like they'd never shared a history, one filled with blood and tears. On their walk back to the hotel, Jiraiya said, She's definitely hopping towns. Naruto grinned. No, she's not. She's got no money for that. How do you know that? Naruto smiled, looking at the moon. I just do. Chapter 26, Cat on a Tree, Blonde on a Bench. Shikamaru sighed with an air of tiredness, keeping his gaze fixed onto the clouds lazily floating in the absurdly blue sky. It was too hot today, and his chin vest itched oddly at the side of his neck. He'd give anything to just be home in that moment, lying on his comfortable mattress with cold water and some snacks to keep him company. Unfortunately, today was going to be brutal. As his first Chunin assignment, he'd been appointed as an assistant teacher at the academy because for some bizarre reason, Iruka-sensei had been given his mandatory week-long vacation this very week. So now here he was, outside the gates of the academy, waiting for his fellow colleagues to come join him. They didn't seem to be in much hurry to come for their jobs though, from the looks of it. Shikamaru sighed again when. Oi! Ninja-san! The squeaky voice of a girl drew his attention. Shikamaru looked down to find a girl with ridiculous orange hair buns and innocent eyes looking up at him eagerly. We need help. Kano Amaru-kun is stuck on a tree he'll fall. Realizing that his supervision hours had technically begun, Shikamaru cursed under his breath but hurried after the girl who was already running inside. Konohamaru, you said? The Nara asked as they jogged to the ground located behind the main building. Yes. He was trying to rescue the cat but then he himself doesn't know how to hear. The girl halted and pointed towards a sturdy-looking tree under which a whole herd of children had gathered. Shikamaru knew exactly who this Kano Amaru was. Not only because he was well known as the bratty grandson of the Hokage but because Naruto, apparently, had a soft spot for this kid. Another headache would come his way if he let this brat get hurt in the form of a furious Naruto. Shikamaru fastened his pace and straightened his back, imposing himself on the academy students who muted their whispers further and scooted away from the front side of the tree, making space for Shikamaru. Kano Amaru! Shikamaru called out, squinting his eyes to catch the outline of the boy and a furry creature. While the unmistakably childish voice held confusion as Konohamaru peeked below, clutching his small arm around the trunk of the tree, while the other held the cat securely on his lap. "Who are you? Where's Iruka-sensei?" Kano Amaru asked, raising his voice higher than necessary. Shikamaru withheld a groan of irritation. Kids were a lot of work. He really wasn't cut out for this job. "Iruka-sensei is on leave. I'm kind of your new sensei for now," he shouted up uncertainly. "We've gotta get you down." Kano Amaru tensed, a movement Shikamaru caught easily. Then, his voice came out much softer. "Don't worry, you'll not get hurt." Kano Amaru's expression was not visible from down below, but Shikamaru guessed that he looked less on the verge of falling down accidentally. "So, how are you getting me down?" Kano Amaru asked. Shikamaru extended his arms, and spoke out calmly. "Jump." "What? Are you insane? Jump and I'll catch you." "This is not a trust exercise, Shinobi-san. And I don't even know you, why would I trust you? This is very dang dash." This time Shikamaru did groan in frustration. "Just jump, I'm not a chunin for show. I'll catch you." Kano Amaru gulped, knowing that he had no other escape. He clutched the cat, who whimpered slightly in his protective hold, and braced himself to let go. He unhooked his hand from the trunk's curve and took a deep breath. 5 minutes later, Kano Amaru sat by the stairs of the academy entrance glaring daggers at Shikamaru. "Because the cat was in danger," he said defensively. The cat was now in Mogi's hold, who was petting the stray soothingly. "It was careless and stupid," Shikamaru says blankly. "You could have fallen and gotten injured. Or you could have fallen along with the cat and injured her too." Kano Amaru turned his head, a pout jutting out. "Whatever." Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Certainly bratty, but the kid did have his heart in the right place. But now for the part where he has to teach the kid something valuable. "Kano Amaru, what you did was noble and nice, yes, but sometimes asking for help is the—" "Shikamaru. What happened?" Sakura's loud inquiry interrupted Shikamaru's moment of wisdom sharing. Her eyes darted from the Nara to Kano Amaru to the cat who had an injured leg. Her hands immediately glowed a nice green shade and she set to healing the animal. Suzuki assessed the scene from beside Sakura before landing his gaze on Kano Amaru. "Did he do something again?" Suzuki asked, like someone too tired of this daily occurring nonsense. Shikamaru knew the question was directed at him. "So Naruto's told you about this kid too, huh?" "Well, he climbed up a tree to save that cat. Somehow, he knew how to get up but froze on the branch and couldn't get down." Suzuki contained a chuckle and Kano Amaru turned to glare at the Uchiha now. "Big bro Naruto will beat you all up for making fun of me, just you'll wait. I will tell him." Suzuki and Shikamaru looked at the kid, finding only true belief and determination, and they couldn't help it. They burst out laughing. Sure, Suzuki said in between a wheezy breath, "Naruto will beat his friends up for your irresponsible behavior." Kano Amaru stood up, and balled his fists before turning to Sakura. "Sakura-san. These two are making fun of me. Naruto bro said you're a kind person, so please pummel these two to the ground for me." Sakura hummed absent-mindedly, "Pummel? Yeah, sure. Later. Bit busy right now." Suzuki chuckled again, resulting in a furious Kano Amaru who landed his tiny punch on the Uchiha's stomach. "You think that did much?" Suzuki asked half curiously as he gripped Kano Amaru's fist in his palm. Opening up and readjusting his fingers, he closed them into a fist again, only this time the knuckles protruded out sharply. "Now hit me, this should be better." Kano Amaru looked at his own fist with marvel and went in for a punch again. "Whoa," he breathed when a slight oomph sound came from the impact. "That's so cool, thanks Suzuki bro. I'm going to defeat that arrogant Shinda from my class in Taijutsu now. Just you wait." Suzuki snorted at the bold proclamation and ruffled the messy hair of Kano Amaru that were, for once, outside his comical blue cloth. Shikamaru's face broke into a small smile seeing the antics of the boy and the uncharacteristic friendliness of the Uchiha. Suzuki had become more sociable in the last few months, but he only ever dropped his guard around his teammates. Shikamaru thought that he didn't mind this more carefree version of Suzuki. "All done," Sakura said cheerfully, as she handed the cat into Kano Amaru's hands before turning towards the two boys. "Let's go." she said with a manic tilt in her voice. We've got to teach a class full of these demonic children. Really, Itake? Stalking your fucking baby brother? We've got to follow the Jinhuriki, not this failure of an Uchiha, Kisame bit out, mockery evident in the way he spoke. He's not even unlocked his Sharingan. Itake frowned as he saw his brother, the one whom he'd held so dearly in his hands once, cradling the baby that now had grown into a wonderful young man. His heart squeezed weirdly as he saw Sasuke smile and laugh with another kid, like that kid was Sasuke's own little brother, and in that moment, a fleeting one, he saw his relationship with Sasuke and that bond between Konohamaru and him. Itake knew it wasn't the same. He knew how twisted and skewed his relationship was with his brother, if he could even call Sasuke that. But it still ached far more than it should to see that Sasuke had filled the gap Itake had left in him with new relationships. With the pink-haired girl and Naruto. With the Nara and the little kid. With his sensei Kakashi-senpai. And it hurt that Itake still had the void left. He still yearned to talk with his brother, to tap his forehead and see the warm pink tint Sasuke's cheeks. But those days were behind Itake. He'd all but destroyed them. But some part of him still hoped. He hoped that he wasn't irredeemable. He hoped that maybe, just maybe, he'll see a day when Sasuke won't look at him with loathing. But it's not like he didn't deserve those looks. He'd been terrible to Sasuke by torturing his mind that night, he'd gone the wrong way about it and it had cost Itake. For Sasuke didn't need more hatred in his life when he smiled so freely with love around him. Itake didn't want to think what would Sasuke be like if he was still actively seeking revenge against him, still pursuing vengeance and nurturing only hatred in his heart. Naruto's words from long ago came back to him. The blonde knew the story behind the massacre somehow. And back then, it hadn't been a comforting thought that it was now. Because Itake wanted Sasuke to know that he didn't kill his parents, his beloved clan, for a petty test of his strength. Maybe, he was unable to confess, Naruto would do it for him. After waiting for his misty eyes to dry, Itake turned around to face Kisame. Let's go, we've got to track the Jinhuriki. Naruto woke up way too early in the morning. It was only 5 a.m. when he stepped outside the hotel he was staying at, fully equipped and his breath smelling like mint. Jiraiya was still sound asleep on the queen-sized bed, limbs entangled with the blanket and sheets as his snores filled his small room. Naruto broke out in a light jog, attuning his senses with the chakra all around him. Not quite sage mode, just a sensory exercise Kakashi had taught him after the war. He picked up the turbulent warmth that was Tsunade's chakra, which felt less turbulent, more steady. So she was probably sleeping. He also felt the calm fluid chakra, which was Shizuo's. Or Tonton's. He didn't quite distinguish the two when he'd sensed them yesterday. And yes, animals did have chakra. Stopping outside the town inn, Naruto peered through the glassy doors into the blackness. He could definitely break in without anyone noticing and wake up Tsunade, but that would just earn him the woman's ire. Besides, he really didn't have a reason to be here this early. He looked around and spotted a wooden bench at the far end of the street and decided to rest there for a bit before continuing his jog. Somehow, he ended up napping there, the cool air and shade of the tree overhead providing a conducive environment for him to sleep and relax. He woke up to a sensation, a prick to his neck, and he sprung his hands around the arms of the supposed assailant in a heartbeat, eyes opening up to meet the surprised face of Shizuo. Nice reflexes, she said, impressed but not startled. My senbon had only just touched your skin. Naruto immediately let go. Thanks, but I'm a shinobi. Having quick reactions is in the job description. Shizuo smiled and sat on the bench beside Naruto, who was now sitting at the left side of it. Fair enough, she cradled Tonton in her arms. So what are you doing here so early? It's only 7 a.m. yet. We were to meet for lunch. Naruto hummed, I know. I wasn't technically here to meet you, just fell asleep here somehow. Shizuo stayed silent for a long time before abruptly speaking up. Tsunade-sama, she want tea, she cut herself off. She's a good person, she's bitter though but still good. She won't return, Naruto. I don't think y'all should waste your efforts like that. This life is good for her, Konoha that village is not a place for her, hasn't been for a long time. You truly believe that? Naruto asked, furrowing his brows, that this life of gambling and alcoholism is good for her. Shizun bit her lip, dropping her gaze to look at Taunton. She's not hurting here at least. Konoha hasn't been good to her, do you know that? She's lost her little brother dash. I know, Naruto said softly, I know the whole story, the old pervert told me, not really a lie, but Konoha isn't at war anymore. Although, if Tsunade-san doesn't return, it might be. Won't tell her that though, no point if she returns to take up yet another burden instead of a responsibility she volunteered for. You really think Konoha will be good for her? Shizun asked. Maybe. I mean the role of a Hokage, with all the bad that it entails, also has a lot of good. Shizun chuckled, you speak like you've experienced things. Like you're older than you seem. Naruto snorted, why thank you. I'd take that as you complimenting my maturity. Shizun smiled again, a hand creeping up sneakily to land around Naruto's neck. Naruto looked weirdly at her, wow, so now you're getting all chummy with me. That's when he felt the prick of a needle on his neck. Oh. Naruto immediately moved his head, trying to look at the small hole the needle had made, only to fail horribly because of the bodily limits a neck possesses to turn around itself. Don't worry, these senbon aren't soaked in poison. Thank Kami, Naruto breathed, stopping his futile efforts. He stood up then, shaking his legs to get feeling back into them. I should get going though. See you at lunch, Shizun-san. Shizun nodded and stood up too. Won't let you do that trick again, Naruto said, as he started to walk away, that was just a fluke. Shizun didn't reply, instead watching as Naruto's figure disappeared around the corner. Then, she walked back inside. Time to wake up her hungover master. Fun. Chapter 27, Team S and the Lunch That Never Started. Sasuke motioned for the other two of his current teammates to hurry up. The brats at the academy had been insufferable, and if he had the choice, Sasuke would have hung them all from the tree Konohamaru had been stuck on not too long ago and never looked back. But as things were, violence wasn't an option. So Sasuke chose the next best choice. Escape. Retreat. The moment the clock struck 12, he rushed outside, his shift technically over. He left Sakura and Shikamaru to deal with wrapping up the shitty lesson on Kumo's history. The amount of groans that topic had garnered from the class full of children had been enough indication that they were going to be bored to death in that lecture. Sasuke smiled internally at that thought. Good. Good that those children suffered as much as he did. He saw the pink of Sakura's hair around the corner of the gates and hurried off again. Those two were more than capable of catching up to him. Didn't matter that he was practically sprinting at full speed, away from the academy, as if running away from some deadly foe. In no time at all, Sasuke was outside the Hokage Tower. He wasn't looking forward to giving his report. Usually, all mission reports went straight to the administration desk, where the appointed Chunin sorted through all the documents, and only the important A and S rank mission reports, or the reports containing bothersome details, were sent to the Hokage. Not verbal reports though. The first Hokage was known to receive any and all reports verbally, committing details to his memory and occasionally jotting down points of notice. It wasn't until Tobirama's tenure that written reports were made mandatory for any and all missions. Only the occasional assassination was reported orally. Hiruzen, though, he incorporated both methods. Not evenly. Not randomly. But based on his mood. Not on a whim though, either. Every other day, the Hokage would insist on his Chunins or Jounins to give him mission reports verbally so he could interact with them. If a Jounin sensei supervised his Genin team's first Tora rescue mission, Hiruzen wanted an oral account of it. He just wanted to laugh at the faces of poor Jounins. And this situation that Sasuke found himself in. Teaching a bunch of over-enthusiastic, idiotic kids? Well, there's no doubt the bastard Hokage found his misery amusing too. Finally, Sakura said, stopping next to him straight from her fast run, "What's gotten into you? You tucked tail and dashed away like a scared kitten." "I did no such thing." Yes, you did," Shikamaru said dryly, already walking into the tower. Sakura followed. "Oh, for fuck's sake, Sasuke, come on." Sasuke restrained his urge to grumble and trailed along. "Udon seemed like a smart kid, don't you think?" Sakura asked both the boys, making idle small talk. Shikamaru hummed, moving his neck to shake of the kinks in it. Yeah, sharp intellect, encyclopedic knowledge. Kinda like yourself. Sakura smiled openly, that was surprisingly sweet Shikamaru. Thanks. Sasuke mumbled something under his breath, turning around the corridor and walked towards the Hokage's office. What did you say? Sakura asked, matching his quickened pace. Sasuke yelled, face still not facing the other two. I said you fuckers need to hurry or I'm leaving y'all and finishing my report alone. Sasuke halted when he finally reached the door of the main office. Before he could even think about knocking, an older shinobi, Jounin in rank if the special Chakrak Kunao in her pouch was any indication, pushed past him and threw open the door in panic-driven haste. Sasuke immediately sidestepped, pressing his body against the wall adjacent to the entrance. He hadn't meant to do something so deliberately intended for eavesdropping. His instincts had just kicked in and he'd followed them. Two of them. The border patrol in Section 3, northwest of Konohan Forest. The Chunin team's messenger Hawk just came in. The Kunoichi spoke fast and urgently, yet her words came out crisp and clean, refined, and clear. Two, you say? Were their identities recognized? Yes, sir. It's conveyed that the two Akatsuki members spotted were Kisame Hoshikage and Itaki Uchiha. It's already been 2 hours since they were last seen. Where were they headed? Difficult to say. Anywhere near the border of Suna, any village there? Or maybe they're headed somewhere else and we're taking an indirect route. All right. I'll take care of things now. Thank you. You're dismissed. The Kunoichi nodded her head and moved towards the door, a little put out that the door wasn't closed shut entirely. Sasuke immediately scooted away, a good 15 steps to his right, trying his best to appear nonchalant. The Kunoichi didn't spare more than an idle glance towards Sasuke, who by all means and purposes was just an ordinary Chunin and the tower of full of those. Sasuke. Sakura called out the moment she saw him, a frown marring her face. Because Sasuke's face was hard, jaw taut with tension and eyes flashing with an emotion, Sakura was afraid to put a name to. What's gotten into you? What happened? She asked, and was grateful that Shikamaru wasn't crowding the two. Sasuke tended to close off if interrogated by too many people. Sasuke didn't reply, still looking at the wall opposite himself. His hands were fisted tightly and Sakura could almost hear his furious thinking. Anger was an emotion Sasuke had always expressed openly. Naruto. He said finally. Which village is he in right now? Sakura took the abrupt line of questioning in stride, furrowing her brows trying to recollect. Mokuta. It's near the northwestern border shared by Konoha and Suna. Why? Sasuke's body was tense, a rubber band pulled taut, ready to snap in half or to unleash all the pent-up energy. He exhaled deeply. Itake, he grit out, he's after Naruto. Sakura's eyes widened, and she immediately grasped his arm tightly. For support, for reassurance. She didn't really know. She had to let him know though, that if he even thought about going after Itake for some revenge or some other bullshit, she wouldn't stop him, but she wouldn't let him go do it alone either. The Hokage. He'll send a team maybe. Someone. Right? Sasuke asked, more to himself than Sakura, but she responded nonetheless. Probably. What do you plan to do? I want to go. I can't. I don't know. I want to go, even if there's a high chance I'll get into fight with Itake again. Sakura nodded sharply and let go of her hold. She signaled for Shikamaru to follow as she went through the door, Sasuke still restraining his emotions in the empty hallway. Sir, Sakura spoke firmly, I'd like to volunteer our team of 3 to accompany the shinobi who will be sent after the Akatsuki. Before you ask of how we know about this mission, you should look for better privacy seals to put here. Might I suggest the work of Chunin Naruto? Hiruzen didn't really know how to respond or react beside the completely involuntary chuckle that escaped his lips. This Kunoichi was something. That's quite the request. But I understand this is rather important for Sasuke, isn't it? And though his tone was light, there was a probing quality to it. A tinge of inquiry, which Shikamaru promptly recognized. Yes, sir. I think it'll be best for our team to join the squad, probably Umbu that'll be dispatched. It's what Sasuke may need. Hiruzen sighed, not really pleased with what the two Chunin were asking for. It may be what Sasuke needs or maybe what he just wants. There's a difference there, Shikamaru-kun. He'd already been negatively affected by the encounter he had with Itachi on his first C rank months ago. And that took time to overcome. Lots of new memories to cover the past ones. Exposing Sasuke to his brother again, forcing a confrontation might reopen old wounds rather than healing any. Sakura chewed her bottom lip, worry evident on her features. She really hadn't thought about what would be best in this situation from an objective standpoint. But it really didn't matter, did it? What Sasuke wanted was clear, and Sasuke definitely hadn't asked for this to just get lost in mindless rage again. Sakura knew enough, could read him enough to know his want for revenge had mellowed, his rage had taken a back step. He looked angered on the fact that Itachi might be after Naruto more than the fact that Itachi had showed up on Konoha's radar. There was no doubt in Sakura's mind that Itachi's presence would still bother Sasuke, but if she ever felt him losing his mind to anger, she'd stop him and knock some sense into him if need be. That's all valid. But with all due respect, sir, she said, quietly but confidently, if you don't trust your Chunin to put the mission before his emotions, then maybe you shouldn't have made him a Chunin in the first place. Hiruzen smiled, the kind only old shinobi who had seen too much, knew too much could give, and picked up a brush, writing something down on a crisp piece of parchment. All right. Sakura, Sasuke, and Shikamaru, temporary Team S, shall we say? Team S is to join Squad Gamma as on-field reinforcements and scouting help. Your primary objective is assistance, his tone sharpened to emphasize, and not deliberate engagement with the enemy. You three shall take direct orders from the squad captain, but your team captain will be Sakura. Sakura straightened her back, resisting the urge to look down and check if her vest was zipped right. Sakura. Do you accept the mission? Sakura nodded, a ghost of a smile on her face. Despite the severity of the situation, this was an honor for which she felt only elation. Good then, Hiruzen said, dismissive all of a sudden, you two may leave. Make sure to be in the tower, the Umbu squad will arrive shortly. Shikamaru inclined his head in acknowledgement, walking out. Sakura followed after, and threw the biggest smile at Sasuke when she faced him. Done. We're on the mission, Sasuke. Sasuke breathed a sigh of relief, something determined and purposeful lingering in his eyes. Not quite raw but honed and brilliant. Not quite rage but something akin to longing for clarity. Sakura couldn't quite tell. Tsunade grumbled when the unmistakable sound of someone knocking reached her ears. Her living room was an utter mess, toiletries, clothes, sandals, and shoes, everything lying around as she tried to pack all her belongings into the bulky trunk. Shizen! She yelled, look which duffer is at the door and tell him to shut the fuck up. Shizen makes a chastising sound, don't you remember? Jiraiya-sama and Naruto-kun are joining us for lunch. Tsunade stills, her medical needles clattering to the floor. Shit. 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 Fucking shit. She'd totally forgotten about that encounter from last night. Stupid Shizen. Why the fuck did she have to accept that brat's demand? Don't open the door, Shizen. She screamed. Too late. Came her apprentice's smooth voice, followed by the click of the door opening and footsteps. Hello. The brat peeked his head around the wall divide. You're sure an organized one, lady. Tsunade glared at him, shoving 3 of her battle dresses into one compartment of her trunk. So you still train, he said, tone sure, thought you'd left behind the kunoichi ways. Tsunade snorts, stomping her way across the room to pick up the towels hanging in the balcony. What do you know, brat? You're a green Chunin. In over your head. Think you can mouth off and act smart in front of Sunin? Well, guess what, kid? I'm not impressed. The Chunin in question didn't turn indignant or defensive like Tsunade had expected him to. Like she'd wanted him to. Instead he grinned lazily, lounging onto her couch after dropping the bag of kunao lying there onto the ground. Impress you? Wouldn't even dare. Kami forbid I'd get you attached to me. 'Cause that's such a sin, no. And yeah, that hurt. Tsunade had absolutely no idea about Naruto knew this. This detail. How Tsunade didn't want to care about anyone anymore. She'd been naive once, hopeful and kind and overly caring. She'd loved too much and then she'd lost just as much. She'd done her best, how could she not? She'd trained and honed her medical arts, she'd drained herself of every drop of chakra every day to develop her techniques, but at the end, nothing had been enough. Nawaki had still died. Dan had still died. And she'd stood there, crying, heartbroken, devastated. So yes, don't blame her if she can't care anymore. If she's wary of opening up her emotions like once she'd freely had. And if that brat somehow understands that and still refuses to respect her wishes, instead trying to provoke her for some petty verbal fight? She had better things to do. Shut up or get out, she said coolly, not betraying any of her inner thoughts. Naruto pressed his lips into a thin line, but said nothing. He got up, collecting and categorizing the things thrown around haphazardly and made neat piles. Tsunade didn't comment on it, not then and not when Jiraiya entered in, Shizune in tow, and the two sat by the fireplace. There was no fire in it at the moment, but the armchairs were comfortable to relax in anyway. The silence was precarious. Hanging by a thread. One unnecessary sound and it'd shatter readily. All four had too much on their minds, and even more in their throats for their months to spill out. But Tsunade would always choose the tense silence over any conversation about Konoha. Damn that village. Silences are always meant to be broken though. Ah, Jiraiya said, lost and helpless, the packing is done, I think. And yes, the packing was indeed done. As was evident by the now closed trunk and lack of random possessions of Tsunade covering every inch of the room. Yes. Tsunade replied cheerily, too stiff and too fake. Lunch? Right? Y'all are here for lunch? Shizune, where are your manners? Get them water, or tea. What would you like, Jiraiya? Tea? No sake though. No sake. Don't want to be what? Inebriated for this conversation, huh? Anyway, get these gentlemen some food. I'll be going for stroll through. Get my muscles moving, yeah. And before anyone knew what was happening, Tsunade was at the door and out already. Naruto hit his head with his palm. I'll go after her. Jiraiya said, standing up. Shizune waved her arms uncertainly, so sorry for that. I think I should go after her though. No, Naruto stood up, hopping towards the exit, I'll get her back. You two stay and eat maybe? Drink. I don't know. Do whatever. Shizune nodded, hesitant and confused as Naruto's head disappeared under the stairs. I have a feeling this will end in a disaster. Jiraiya whispered. Isn't this a disaster already? Shizune replied. Jiraiya chuckled, oh no, by Tsunade's standards this is just the tremor before the earthquake. Shizune groaned. Chapter 28, Legacies. Tracking Tsunade wasn't an issue for Naruto after he realized that the Sannin had a careless habit of leaving a chakra trail behind while stomping away in anger. Would have been fatal if she still went on missions, but as things were, her habit only caused some damage to the roads. Tsunade-san, he sighed when he finally found her pounding away at the mass of boulders on the outskirts of the town, don't you think you're acting too irrationally for a grown adult at the moment? Tsunade stopped her raging, one hand glowing viridian as she healed her bruised knuckles. I don't think you're in any position to lecture me, brat. I beg to differ, Naruto said, raising an unimpressed brow. Being lower in rank and age doesn't make me any less capable of calling out bullshit when I see it. Tsunade snorted, taking a seat on one of the rocks that hadn't faced her wrath. You think this is bullshit? That I'm throwing some childish tantrum? No, Naruto acquiesced, not a tantrum. But you're not being entirely reasonable either. I know your past, Jiraiya's told me already, so don't think I'm not aware about your burdens. Tsunade frowned at that. You're a Chunin. You shouldn't be speaking the way that you do. Naruto shrugged, a small smile breaking out on his face. Sometimes you just find empathy from the unlikeliest of sources. Empathy? I thought you liked Konoha, kid. How exactly do you understand my hatred for the village? Naruto joined her on the rock. I don't. But I do understand what led to that hatred. Loss did. You lost people important to you, and losing that which you love is painful. Too painful sometimes. And it can cause us to do things we normally wouldn't. Say, would you have left Konoha if Noeke was still alive? No, not then. Noeke, I loved him. I loved him so much. Him and Dan. They both were so similar, their ideals and sincerity touched everyone around them. Both wanted to become the Hokage. She chuckled softly. Noeke was more naive though, but his determination wasn't childish. He truly believed in himself and the good of the shinobi world, and he worked so hard for making his dream come true. But he didn't make it very far despite of it all. If he'd still been alive today, I'd be clapping from the roof of the hospital as Sensei would pass him that horrible hat. The two sat in silence for a bit. Then, Naruto spoke up. We have a book on Konohan history, one dedicated solely to the biographies of its leaders. You know that? No. What's that got to do with anything? You think I'll come back to get my picture pasted in some children's book? Naruto shook his head. Not a children's book. We had it in the academies last year. Each Hokage wrote the first chapter of their biographies. And they're the parts I remember, the parts that I care about. You'll get to write that too, if you choose to come and take on that role. I'll pass, the Sunin said. I don't want to remembered anyway. I can't be the role model you seem to think I should be. You don't want to be remembered, but Noeke and Dan? What about them? Except you and a few of us, who else knows that they existed? It's not like people go through the shinobi archives on the daily to honor any and all shinobi that have died. Get to the point, will you? I feel like you're purposely leading me in circles. Naruto sighed. I'm just trying to make you understand that becoming the Hokage isn't only about becoming the Hokage. It's carrying out the legacies of not only the Kages before you but also the legacies of Dan and Noeke. It was their dream, wasn't it? And you'll be living their dream for them. You can still keep those two alive through their ambitions, you can still honor their lives, however short they were. Don't you think that's better than what you're doing right now? Not only wasting away your own life but also making a joke of their lives by turning your back on the village that they had loved to bits. Tsunade gritted his teeth. I don't appreciate you using their memories as a persuasion trick, Naruto. It's not a trick. Naruto's gaze turned apologetic, and I'm sorry for using their names like this. But I just want you to understand that you've ran enough. Now will be a good time to stop this constant chase and return. Tsunade didn't respond, fixing her gaze across the field at the tree cover. You don't have to become Hokage, Naruto said softly, not if you don't want to. It's a huge responsibility, and it's fair that you don't want to shoulder it. But, many would appreciate if you came back home. Home, Tsunade repeated, somber. Konoha is my home, you think? Don't know, Naruto admitted, but I know some still consider you family there. And home is where your family is it. How did you not know we're after the Akatsuki? The porcupine-masked shinobi asked, the disbelief clear in his voice. His companion shrugged, himself adorning a zebra mask. The Hokage didn't exactly brief me as much as he shoved me towards you and Nico, you know. Sasuke glanced at the third member of the Umbu squad, her purple hair flowing a good length down her back. She snorted at the response of his teammate. It was in the mission file, Rai, the file you were supposed to read before starting on the mission. Zebra somehow managed to glare at Cat despite having his face covered. It's Zebra for you, dear. Or did you forget we're on a mission with Shinins? It was then that the other two Umbu members registered that they weren't exactly traveling alone and that trailing behind them were Sasuke, Sakura, and Shikamaru. Oh no, Sakura said, please do carry on. This is all very entertaining. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Am I the only one here who's taking the mission seriously? Because that's slightly disturbing. No, Sasuke said, I'm equally serious. Though I do agree, you Umbu shinobi aren't as stern as I thought you would be. Porcupine waved a hand at them. We get that a lot. Somehow, everyone's convinced that we're some cold, ruthless mercenaries with zero emotions. But I'm proud to inform you that there's no shinobi unit as chaotic as the Umbu. You know, Cat said dryly, It's not really something you should be so proud about. Can we speed up? Sasuke asked, not apologetic in the least about interrupting their conversation. Sure kid, Zebra replied, already hopping off twice as fast with easy grace, we definitely can. Though whether y'all can keep up remains to be seen. Sasuke set his lips in a resolute line and jumped with more chakra output. He needed to get to Mokuta as soon as possible. This weird feeling wouldn't stop nagging him. Naruto and Tsunade were returning back to the inn when it happened. At the edge of town, just steps away from the first building on the border, a fireball came straight at them. Actually, calling it a fireball was an understatement. It was a forest fire compressed into a sphere if Naruto was being honest here. Naruto! Tsunade yelled instantly, landing in a crouch after dodging the surprise attack. I'm here! Naruto shouted back, a good few meters between the two. Before they could communicate further, Samehada was crashing down on Naruto and he was forced to turn his back on the Sannin. So you can dodge. Kisame grinned at Naruto who was in the process of pulling out his katana. Think you can go against one of the swordsmen of the mist? Cocky. Very cocky. Naruto didn't humor him with a reply. He bent low, katana lined in a reverse grip and pointed the blade at Kisame's hand, rather than blocking Samehada's next strike. Shifting his weight at the last second, Naruto rolled onto the ground before the chakra-eating sword could make contact with his body and sprung up again, entering Kisame's personal space easily. His katana slashed at the rogue nin's arm, which Kisame avoided by turning his body away. Naruto was ready though. He brought his sword back with all the remaining momentum such that the blunt hilt jabbed right onto his opponent's chest. Kisame grunted and moved away but not before attempting a half-hearted counter-attack with Samehada that went in vain. This was a tough situation, Naruto lamented. Not that he couldn't fend off Kisame. That wasn't exactly the problem. The problem was the presence of Tsunade and her ongoing fight with Itachi which even in its early stages seemed to favor the Uchiha over the Senju. Naruto was fairly certain that there would be a blood wound sometime during their battle and after that Tsunade's loss was kind of guaranteed. He could summon Gamabunta again, though he doubted the toad was immune to Genjutsu. Even if the chief was, defeating two Akatsuki members alone wasn't exactly believable for a fresh Chunin. This would have so much easier if Tsunade wasn't around. He couldn't change his circumstances, no point grumbling about it. Kisame was back again with his grinning and slashing, and Naruto soon was occupied in his little bout against him. He was vaguely aware about Tsunade getting trapped in a Genjutsu and then getting out of it somehow. Compared to his fight, the other match was much more intense. Naruto wanted to help Tsunade somehow, but he really didn't know what he could do right now. Especially since the Sannin seemed to be doing just fine on her own thus far. Well actually, he could do something. The next minute or so went in discreetly gathering enough chakra for a small toad that he promptly summoned while hiding behind one of the boulders. Kisame kept taunting his supposed cowardice in the meantime. Soon enough, he was back on the field, moving away from a vicious water attack sent his way. Time to get crafty. Is that smoke? Cat was the one to first notice the stream of smoke moving up in the distance. Porcupine squinted, and Sasuke was quick to confirm. Yes, that's from a fire jutsu, I'm certain of it. Zebra nodded, serious all of a sudden, right then. I guess we've located the enemy or it's just a ninja fight. Regardless, we'll follow this route, it leads us to the area where the smoke's originating from anyway. As we know, Itachi Uchiha has loads of fire jutsu in his arsenal, he might be the root of this. Stay alert, and you three, he looked at the Chunin, do not engage. If the Akatsuki are on site, stay on the sidelines and only assist when directly commanded to. Insubordination will not be tolerated. Sasuke nodded even though he wasn't exactly pleased with the situation. Tsunade clutched the side of her arm which had taken the brunt of Itachi's previous attack. It was extremely difficult to predict the man's moves when Tsunade couldn't look at his face, wary of getting caught in his Genjutsu. What's worse was that Tsunade knew that his ring was also capable of trapping her in Genjutsu somehow. She was an out-of-work kunoichi, but she'd never really stopped being a part of the rumor mill, and she'd gathered enough from hushed conversations to know what the ring was capable of. The first genjutsu she'd been caught into by the Uchiha had been surprisingly mild. As if Itake was giving her a feel of things, letting her adjust to the fighting. It was odd, but she wasn't about to complain. She'd broken free easily, having mastered her chakra circulation enough to realize the subtle change it underwent when subjected to a genjutsu. Recognizing it as half the work to break out of it anyway. Another fire dragon was unleashed towards her, and Tsunade substituted far enough that she got some respite from the constant fighting. Her arm was almost completely healed, but she could feel her chakra depleting. It was half gone already, and she couldn't keep this up. She hadn't gone all out in God knows how many years, and even though she'd been a combat medic, going against a shinobi whose speciality lies solely in combat wasn't really a fair match. She was thankful for one thing though: there'd been no blood so far. A drop or two maybe, but other than that, there'd only been burnt flesh and a sprained ankle. The former did get her queasy, but not enough to render her immobile. She ducked the moment she heard the whoosh of a kunai headed for her neck. Then there was another. Then another. And before she knew it, a barrage of precisely aimed, chakra-powered kunais were coming for her. She was agile enough to avoid any major wounds, but a knife went right past her left thigh, tearing the fabric, and skin underneath, open. It wasn't until after she'd brought her fist down, shredding the ground in a show of monstrous strength, that she realized the scent that she'd been inhaling. The scent of blood. She looked down, trepidation already weighing on her. And there it was, the unmistakable red liquid flowing down the side of her pants in a thin stream. The injury wasn't even severe, but the ice that gripped her insides was ruthlessly suffocating, and she was already on the ground. Hands trembling, she tried to summon healing chakra, but nothing came out. Instead her hands landed directly on the blood, coating themselves in a thin layer of it. It was easy then, to just forget everything. Forget the fight, the sounds of battle, Naruto's shouts for her to get up. She just sat there, some form of convoluted slideshow of horrible memories playing in her mind. So maybe that was the reason why she didn't even try to dodge another fireball coming straight at her, hot enough to melt the skin right off of her bones. Chapter 29, Unleashed. Naruto cursed loudly as Kisame's annoying sword came swinging at his calf with enough force to bring down a tree. He hopped above it, directing his body in a slanting position, landing a kick directly on the bastard's face. He was only paying half his attention to this boring battle. The other half of his brain was occupied in inspecting Tsunade's hunched and resigned posture, seated on the ground. It was evident that the Sunin was in a trance induced by the blood staining the side of her pants. Naruto knew, even before the fire entered his frame of vision, that Itake had unleashed yet another scorching jutsu. He had more than enough time to shunshin there and counter the fireball, but the rapidly approaching chakra signatures told him that he didn't need to. In the blink of an eye, the white mane of his master was visible in all its ridiculous glory. Shizune in tow, who was already kneeling beside Tsunade, fussing about the wound on her leg. The messenger toad had done its job right. Jiraiya's first order of business was stopping Itake's attack with a little over-the-top water tornado. It was a good thing that there was a stream nearby to summon the water from, or the Sunin would have lost most of his chakra already. Huffing, Jiraiya finally turned towards Naruto, who was now twisting himself onto Kisame's back, one of his most unused weapon in hand. Senbon. Just as Jiraiya grinned at him, Naruto plunged the needle into the shark-like human's neck, straight on the medulla oblongata, and hopped off. What the fuck do you, Kisame cursed, flinging his sword behind him, hoping to get the annoying brat. The insane amount of rage flowing through his veins didn't let him comprehend that his speech was suddenly slurred. Either rage, or well, the puncture to his medulla. The moment he did realize this though, was when his hold on Samehada went slack and possibly, for the first time in his life, his sword fell from his grasp mid-battle. Naruto was now a good few steps away from him, smiling wide. Kisame just stood there for a bit, trying to wrap his head around this sudden turn of events. He really believed he was winning their little bout, and understand his circumstances. He could probably pull out the strategically wedged Senbon, but that could risk more damage to the medulla, and his brain fog was already increasing to the point that he found himself incapable of making too precise a movement. He gritted his teeth in annoyance, refusing to be bested by a Konoha-Chunin hierarchy or not. He was a highly feared rogue nin, damn it. Channeling chakra to his neck to strengthen his organs there, he summoned the water a few meters away used in that old guy's previous attack. He'll show these pesky tree huggers what an actual water attack looked like. He muttered under his breath, preparing a large-scale jutsu effortlessly. All the while, the brat didn't even twitch. With a mental roar, he directed the attack towards the Jinhiriki, forgetting to scale it down in order to keep his foe alive. A raging gust of wind accompanied the swirl of pointed drops of water, needles in all actuality, as they spun round and round against themselves, creating insurmountable amounts of friction. The jutsu was a favorite of Kisame's, a torrent of sharp water needles with impeccable speed and range. Vicious and brutal but subtle all the same. Still not rid of the sluggish feeling in his body, he bent to take a hold of Samehada again, while his attack approached the brat. He never got back up, because a kick that tore through his spine met his back and he face-planted onto the ground, inches away from his fallen weapon. He turned just in time to avoid the katana of a masked woman, who along with the other two armored shinobi exuded absolutely zero chakric presence. His head throbbed, and the senbon in his neck dug further as he lay on his back to avoid another blow to his face. Absently, he registered the fact that his previous attack to the blonde Jinhiriki had been dispelled by the Chunin who was currently regarding him and the other nin carefully. Deshitsuki, Kisame, that's Ataka there. Kami, two Sunin fighting together. Right. Stop fanboying, we're in a fight dash. Tisk, 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 don't suck the fun out of everything you mean old gran. Desh don't you dare. Focus, you buffoon. To say that Kisame was slightly surprised by the bickering trio of extremely strong shinobi would not do justice to the expression on his face, which was downright dumbfounded. The three went back and forth all the while trying to get a hit in which they succeeded in before Kisame blasted a water bomb, earning him a few breaths of reprieve. Somehow, the entire battle was growing out of proportion, with the arrival of another Sunin and these elite Konoha nin. With the shallow pools of chakra remaining in his core, Kisame was positive that he would lose if he didn't retreat any soon. He glanced at his partner who seemed to be staring at yet another new arrival, another Chunin Kisame couldn't quite identify due to the distance. A whistle of a needle brought back his attention to the ongoing fight, just as an earth spear barreled towards him. So much for some simple information gathering. Sakura creased her brow in worry, looking between Sasuke and his brother while avoiding making eye contact with the latter. When they'd reached the field, all six of them had first scouted and analyzed the two separate battles ensuing on the grounds. Naruto seemed to be holding his own against Kisame, and it had been Genma who'd pointed out the senbon sticking out of the rogue nin's body, which explained the ninja's uncoordinated movements. Yojao had then looked at Shizune and deduced that she'd been responsible for that senbon, and Sakura hadn't corrected her, neither had Sasuke or Shikamaru. Somehow, they all knew that Naruto was a lot stronger than he seemed, at least more capable than a Chunin-ranked ninja, but all their attempts to get Naruto talking about it had failed. The Nara was aware though, about something Sasuke and Sakura weren't, and he'd told them to be patient and let Naruto confide in them instead of pestering the blonde for answers. After a few minutes, the squad of Umbu had deemed Kisame a bigger threat with only a Chunin to fend him off and had told Team S to approach the other battle, and assist if the Sunins asked them for it. So here they were now, standing just outside an invisible boundary, safe from collateral damage from Ataka's and Jiraiya's attacks. But Sakura wasn't worried about herself though. The moment Ataki had sensed their presence, he'd completely disregarded his own fight, opting to stare at Sasuke instead. Bastard, she heard Sasuke mutter, glaring at his brother who looked just as impassionate and detached as ever. From the corner of her eye, she saw the Sunin, Naruto's teacher, halt his assault, confused by Ataka's sudden lack of interest. Little brother, Ataka's voice had a soft tenor, despite the unfeeling tone it carried. Sasuke pulled his arm away from Sakura's gentle hold. Don't call me that, you've no right. And Sakura thought that was fair. She sure wouldn't want her sibling who'd massacred her family to have any ties with her. Nevertheless, the rising tension was palpable, and as the team captain she wouldn't allow Sasuke to fight a ninja he couldn't take on. Ataka's face hardened even more. You've grown since we last met each other, Sasuke. Sasuke didn't reply, clenching his jaw and trying to suppress the hurricane of raw emotions running amok inside him. Sakura wanted to put a hand on his shoulder, or maybe sit him down with her, run her hands through his hair, do something, anything to ease his turmoil, but she couldn't. She knew he wouldn't appreciate any support right now, and would only view her as patronizing or worse, pitying. And Sakura knew how bad it was to be pitied, so she stood firm beside him, hoping that it'd be enough. "Come now," the infamous Uchiha said, though it sounded terribly half-hearted to Sakura's ears, "don't be so angry, Sasuke. Not unless you're ready to fight me. Tell me, is your hatred strong enough?" Sakura wanted to snort at the ridiculous question. She didn't know why, but this all felt like an act, like Itachi wasn't really there inside that body. As if someone else was forcing those words out of him. She'd seen the soft gaze that had momentarily lingered on Sasuke when they'd first arrived before it was gone, locked underneath barricades of indifference. When she'd finished with her internal monologue of berating Itachi Uchiha, she turned towards her friend. She was on guard then, because Sasuke's entire body was trembling with a fury that would have made her run crying once but now only caused dread to pool in her gut. This wasn't looking too good. But then, trailing down Sasuke's cheek came a tear, and Sakura realized, with a jolt, that Sasuke wasn't angry. No, he was hurt. And anger is just how he'd always covered that hurt. Sakura turned her glare towards Itachi, that son of a bitch that had caused and was still causing his own brother such pain. When her eyes found Sasuke's again, they weren't black anymore. No. They were a red so deep, Sakura found herself mesmerized. Naruto winced internally as Yugo's katana sliced through Kisame's torso. He was somewhat relieved that backup had arrived, especially such competent backup at that. He had already more or less rendered Kisame defeated, only wearing him out had remained. But now he didn't need to defeat the Akatsuki member, not that it was difficult, but he was weary of taking the credit for it. He couldn't yet afford Hiruzen's attention on him, not without having a proper excuse for his abilities. He knew he could trust these three Umbu members to not let Kisame escape, and after a quick signal to Radu, he made a dash towards Jiraiya, hoping to de-escalate the situation there. He wasn't exactly on Itachi's side, he just wanted to give the guy a chance to perhaps redeem himself. Or well, mend his relationship with Sasuke, though that was highly unlikely given their history. He stopped and breathed a bit erratically when he reached Jiraiya's location. "Oh, you're here," the Sannin said, stating the obvious since he didn't know what else to say. So what's up with that Uchiha brat? He's your teammate, right?" "Was, but yeah." Naruto nodded, looking at Sasuke, who seemed distressed, Sakura and Shikamaru equally so. The next few moments resulted in an exchange of dialogues between the two brothers, and then Sakura was staring at Sasuke. Naruto felt an overly familiar disturbance in Sasuke's chakra, and he knew, immediately, that Sasuke had finally unlocked his Sharingan. "Oh," Naruto said, blinking, "well, that's nice." Jiraiya squinted at Itachi, noting how the traitor was still staring at Sasuke with an unreadable look on his face. "This is all very sudden, but Sensei will be extremely happy when we turn in two Akatsuki members to the TNI department," Jiraiya said idly, almost as if he hadn't just been in a death match with one of the most powerful shinobi alive. "Kisame, I understand," Naruto replied, "but how do you plan on restraining Itachi?" Jiraiya grinned, "Simple, really. Just gotta catch him off guard while he's having a staring contest with his younger brother. Those three there," he pointed at the Umbu and their opponent, "have already knocked out the Blue Menace." Naruto nodded, knowing that Itachi wouldn't probably be killed off the moment he's brought to Konoha. Hiruzen wasn't that off his game yet. Though, he really didn't trust Danzo to do something underhanded. Well, he'd cross that bridge when he got there. For now, Naruto and Jiraiya shared a brief strategy. The Sannin was a little skeptical about involving his apprentice, but even he knew that Naruto wasn't to be underestimated. As a failsafe, he instructed Shizune to aim her Senbon at Itachi's eyes once Jiraiya had distracted him enough and if Naruto was defeated. The medic nin gave a resolute nod, readying herself. Everything felt different. Every color seemed more vibrant, more real, almost alive. The dirt's grainy texture was clearer, like Sasuke could actually feel it just by seeing it. The world shifted into focus, like he'd been wearing blotchy eyeglasses and they'd finally been cleaned to reveal the sharp details of everything around him. It was slightly dizzying and wholly amazing. But the giddy happiness at finally unlocking his clan's bloodline faded as soon as it arrived when Sasuke remembered just what had triggered it. Itachi stood opposite him, nonchalant as ever, but the subtle gulping and twitching hands gave away how the Uchiha was truly feeling. If Sasuke didn't know any better, he'd say Itachi was worried for him. Remember, he heard Shikamaru say, "We're not to engage." Sasuke knew he meant well, that his Nara companion didn't mean to sound so stern and inconsiderate, but those words only served to sharpen the pain Sasuke felt because he really just wanted to sprint to this monster residing in his brother's flesh and punch him, his face, his stomach, his chest and pound Itachi to a bloody pulp. He wanted to remove all this anger and aggression building inside of him. Sasuke just wanted to be free of all of it. It was suffocating him. Just then, a tremor shook the ground beneath his feet and he jumped away, gripping the small sword on his back, Sakura and Shikamaru flanking his left and right, stances ready. But it seemed that they weren't the targets of whatever caused that tremor. Jiraiya did. The Sunin was onto Itachi, out of absolutely nowhere, with no prior warnings. His earth jutsu almost swallowed Itachi whole, but he escaped with a wound to his ankle. The Sunin's hair spun menacingly as they formed spikes, and as if they were somehow sentient, the spikes attacked Itachi relentlessly. All the while, Jiraiya was occupied in a taijutsu round with the Roguenin, who was trying his best to trap Jiraiya in a genjutsu. Alas, for all people liked to call him dumb, the Toad Sage was as sharp as they came in ninja fight. Even from their distance, Sasuke was able to make out their rapid movements. He guessed this was his Sharingan's doing. So he saw just how slow Itachi was getting, Jiraiya too, but the sage seemed to be having the upper hand. Then, the blur between who'd win and who'd lose became clear when Naruto popped out of the fucking ground, pouncing onto Itachi with his body encased simmering yellow chakra. What the actual hell, Sakura murmured beside him, and Sasuke couldn't help but agree. Sometimes, it seemed like Naruto was an ocean of secrets and they'd only just uncovered a cup full of those. The three Chunin continued observing the battle far above any of their levels with concealed awe. Jutsus of each element were thrown about. Taijutsu was brutal and quick, genjutsus were repelled before they could ever take effect. It wasn't even a drawn-out match, hardly 10 minutes, but by the end of it Itachi was clearly outmatched. Now that's a sight Sasuke thought he'd never see. Give up, Naruto whispered as he dodged a strike and angled himself near Itachi's ears. I'll get you out, you have my word. Itachi didn't respond, pondering over Naruto's offer in his head. He was tired. So tired. Tired of running. Tired of pretending. Tired of hating his brother. Tired of embodying this role that went so against his morals, his values. Tired of hiding his true self. Tired of following the whims of Konoha's elders. Tired of just not being there for Sasuke. Tired of being so goddamn indifferent all the time. He wanted nothing more than to return, not to Konoha but to his brother. He'd regret it later, maybe. But right then, he chose to put his faith in this blonde kid who'd unknowingly chipped away at his resolve to remain a spy, to die by the hands of his brother. As he shut his eyes, Sharingan dissolving into regular blackness, he welcomed the pain from the impact on his head, sending him unconscious. His last thought, or rather image, was of a fleeting memory of Sasuke, young and cheerful, clinging to his back like a koala, and Itachi wondered if he'd ever experience joy, the kind he had in that particular memory. Chapter 30, Trust. Blasphemy. This was all plain blasphemy. Sakura really should have expected this. Naruto was a secretive bastard and she knew it. So it shouldn't have surprised her as much as it did that the very first secret Naruto revealed to them, casually and idly, was that a monstrous chakra entity was sealed inside of him. It made her worry about the other secrets he'd yet to reveal. What an asshole, she muttered, and was pleased to see that Sasuke nodded his head in agreement. Not only had their blonde teammate dumped this shocking revelation onto them, but had also somehow managed to convince Jiraiya to let him and Shikamaru go to Suna, to inform the Kaze Cage about the capture of 2 Akatsuki members. Sakura called bullshit. Those 2 idiots just wanted to spend time together. Is that what it was then? The yellow chakra was the Kyuubi's. she inquired. Yes, Jiraiya nodded, traveling a few feet away from the duo. His chakra has synced especially well with the Nine Tails. It would have been impressive if it wasn't so terrifying. Sakura shuddered mentally at the thought of the sheer power Naruto held within himself. Not that he wasn't a powerhouse already, but with almost infinite amount of chakra, he would simply be unstoppable. She glanced at Sasuke, frowning a bit at seeing his mulish expression. She had no doubts about why he was in such a mood. His traitor of a brother lay unconscious, sealed inside a status scroll lying inside Sasuke's own pouch. But she hoped that he'd get over it. A grumpy Sasuke was 10 times better than an upset one. Kami, help her. It's too fucking hot, Shikamaru grumbled, immensely peeved by the fact that he had to walk across the sand dunes just because Naruto had the bright idea to visit Suna. Duh, we're in a desert, Shika. What did you expect? A nap under the cloudy sky, Shikamaru replied, not this shitty task of dragging my feet through the burning sand. Naruto hid a smile, just use chakra under your feet, dumbass. That should help. Groaning, the Nara channeled chakra to the soles of his sandals and refrained from complaining about how troublesome it was to expend chakra. So, what's the real reason we're headed to Suna? He asked, keeping his gaze fixed at the huge grainy wall indicating the entrance into their allied village. What do you mean? It's an intelligence-sharing mission, dear. Nothing more. Spare me those lies, Shikamaru said dryly, a messenger hawk could have simply done that. There's no reason for you to physically be in Suna. Naruto grinned at him, you're too smart for your own good, Shika. But yeah, I've got another reason to be there. Remember Gaara? Gaara. Shikamaru scanned through all the neatly packed information in his head, that maniac who almost maimed Lee and then lost against you in the finals. Precisely, Naruto said, he's my friend. Of course he is, Shikamaru replied, not the least surprised that Naruto had gone and befriended the guy who had more or less been the personification of killing intent. He's the Kazekige's youngest child. Naruto supplied helpfully. I'm aware. So, what about him? He's like me. In what way? Shikamaru asked, he didn't exactly peg me as the gay type. Idiot, Naruto interrupted, laughter in his eyes, if anything, Gaara is asexual. But that's not what I was talking about. Figured. So. He's also a Jinchuriki? Beyond the slight widening of his eyes, Shikamaru didn't show any outward reaction. He'd had his suspicions about Gaara's ungenin-like chakric presence, but this made more sense than all of his theories. So, you've developed some sort of kinship with Gaara and just want to randomly spend time with him. Kind of. Naruto answered. But I also have to fix his mess of a seal. Swear to Kami, I haven't seen such a horrible sealing disaster ever. Fine, Shikamaru said, resigned to his fate of following Naruto around in his way too adventurous endeavors, but you're playing shogi with me later. I need some much-needed relaxation. Naruto chuckled because Shikamaru relaxed 10 times more than he moved a muscle. Sure, but let's pick up the pace. I wanna be there before nightfall. You're carrying me to Suna if I pass out of exhaustion. You're a fucking chinin, Naruto said exasperatedly, thumping the lazy guy on his back, act like one. Whatever, Shikamaru mumbled but obliged. Besides, traveling across the desert with Naruto by his side didn't really sound too bad. What a dumb fuck, Naruto hissed, walking in the busy corridor alongside Shikamaru. What are your thoughts on assassinating the Kazekage? Shikamaru bit back his laughter and said, I'm in, but I'm not helping you discard his corpse. That's on you. Perfect, you just need to hold him down long enough for my katana to go through his stone-cold heart. Calm down, Shikamaru replied, mirth still lurking in his tone, cages are all universal assholes, except the first Hokage, so no point raging about it. He doesn't even call his own son by his name. Naruto ranted, so he's not only a shitty Kage but also a shitty father, and I'm kidnapping Gaara, that's it. We're taking him back to Konoha. Yes, sure. Let's commit an international crime while decimating our peace treaty with Suna by stealing their Jinchuriki. However did you come up with such a wonderful plan? Shut up, Naruto grumbled. Politics suck. Indeed, Shikamaru agreed with a solemn nod. So, Any ideas about where Gaara might be? The cage residence, probably. Naruto knew exactly where that was, but he didn't think it'd be appreciated if he navigated Suna like he knew it like the back of his hand, so instead he replied. Great. Let's buy a map of this god-forsaken maze of a village. Gaara! Kankuro's unsusurrul loud scream broke Gaara's meditative state, and the redhead moved out of his room to check what his foolish brother wanted from him. He had to admit that this tentative truce with his siblings wasn't so bad. Sure, Kankuro still got on his nerves and Temari was too overbearing for his liking, but they were finally getting along. Their eyes didn't hold fear when they looked at him, and that's probably what Gaara was most grateful for. What is it, Kankuro? He asked, crossing his arms as he leaned to look below the banisters into the living room. Someone's here to meet you. Oh, that's not a usual occurrence. Another assailant. No, you idiot. Came the voice of his idiot brother. He says he's your friend. That Konoha fellow. All bright and loud and infuriatingly strong. The moment Gaara registered his visitor's identity, he rushed towards the door, though he doubted his brother could tell he was in any rush. He spotted the yellow hair standing by the concrete wall almost barricading their home, along with some guy in a ponytail. Judging by their vests, he reckoned that they were promoted after the exams. He walked up to them calmly, not unsettled by their visit but definitely curious about the reason. Hey Gaara. Naruto cheerfully greeted when he saw him. How's it going, buddy? Gaara sidestepped out of the incoming hug but was surprised when Naruto ended up wrapping his arm around his shoulders, smiling brightly at him. Hello, he said in return, I'm well. The other Chunin nodded his head in acknowledgement. Hi, I'm Shikamaru Nara. So, Gaara didn't really know how to lead a proper conversation. So he asked. You're not here to murder me, right? Naruto's grip on him turned gentle and his smile mellowed, something unreadable in his eyes. No Gaara. No one's ever laying a damn finger on you ever again. Well, Naruto, I don't think that's realistically possible. Shut the hell up. Deshan, you're laying all your 5 fingers on him this very moment. Naruto turned his sweet, honeyed smile towards Shikamaru, who was already glancing at the clouds with utmost interest. As I was saying, Naruto continued pointedly, we come in peace. Gaara nodded, unsure of what to make of all that needless banter. So what brings you here? Oh, nothing silly, Naruto said, walking while pulling Gaara with him. Just wanted to meet you, that's all. Gaara highly doubted that this was all. I may be a bit behind in following social cues, but even I'm not foolish enough to not detect that obvious lie, Uzumaki. You caught me, Naruto replied mildly. Say Gaara, do you trust me? That question again. Gaara hesitated, thinking about his reply. He would be lying if he said that he hadn't warmed up to Naruto. The blonde was nice, the kind of nice Gaara never hoped to be. And Naruto was nice to him. For no reason other than to genuinely befriend him, and Gaara found this thought somewhat pleasant. I do, he said, then added, but pull a prank on me like Kankuro did and I'll break your legs. For some reason, Naruto laughed and Gaara wondered if the blonde knew that Gaara totally meant what he had said. The Sharingan isn't as scary as I thought, Sakura mused, it's actually quite pretty to look at. It's supposed to be the most intimidating feature of an Uchiha. Sasuke informed her, not surprised that she didn't hold the same opinion as his now-dead clansman. Really? Sakura asked. But they're so beautiful. Sasuke didn't reply, instead he turned off his Kekkai Genkai and sighed when the constant pull of chakra to his eyes stopped, now returning to its normal, steady flow. I need to get more Kunao, Sakura said abruptly, and oh, Ino told me last week that old man Satoru's shop is having a sale this weekend. I'm definitely getting new shinobi sandals. Wanna join me? No, thanks. Sasaki replied smoothly, having absolutely no intention to follow Sakura around while she shopped the whole day. Such a joy killer, Sakura rolled her eyes. I'll get you a pair, too. Because I'm a good person like that. Sasuke chuckled, but she really was, he thought, a good person. All this random chit-chat was only for his sake. Sasuke knew why Sakura was doing it, so he didn't end up too deep inside his head and get all gloomy again. It wasn't easy to keep some of his darker thoughts away when the man he'd wanted to kill for so long was just behind that metal door, getting interrogated. But as long as there wasn't too much silence for his thoughts to go astray, Sasuke would manage. Doubly so, with Sakura's support. Is Tsunade-sama really returning? Sakura questioned when the silence stretched a bit longer. Mostly, Sasuke said, remembering what Naruto had whispered to Jiraiya and the look the two Chunin had shared amongst themselves. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say she'll be here by the time Naruto returns. Awesome! Sakura cheered with no small amount of excitement. She's the best medicnin out there and you can bet your ass that I'm going to become her student no matter what. Sasuke didn't doubt it one bit. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, a stern voice called out to them and Sasuke turned towards the man he immediately identified as their proctor for the written portion of the Chunin exams. Yes, Ibiki-san. We'd like to ask you two a few questions. Step inside. Sakura cast him a nervous look before a soft smile graced her lips and she stood up with him. Sasuke sat through the entire interrogation with Sakura's hand on his thigh and it helped ground him enough to recall the details of their encounter with the two rogue nin. He tried to keep things professional but when some of his personal rage leaked through, no one pointed it out. By the end, he wasn't sure what he wanted Itaka's fate to be. But he didn't have to make the decision. Itaka's crimes spoke for themselves and he was sure his brother would either be executed or imprisoned for life. Justice was better than revenge, Sasuke understood this now. Thank you for your cooperation, Ibiki-san said and there was dismissal in his tone, clear as day. Both Chunins exited together, and Sasuke didn't return to his cold apartment that night. Sakura knew that wouldn't be good for him, so she convinced her parents to let him bunk at her house for the night and Sasuke, too drained, emotionally and physically, to refuse, simply complied. He lied on the futon beside Sakura's bed and slept more peacefully than he had since the massacre. Check the description for the links to the author.